It begins in 1861. I have just inherited the throne of the Netherlands. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 426, Dutch warships circumnavigate Sri Lanka? 1868, newspapers around the world were full of explosive news. 5 warships of the Kingdom of the Netherlands Navy circled the Sri Lanka Chagos archipelago, a British colony in the Far East Indian Ocean. According to the Times and the Financial Times, newspapers close to the British opposition Whig Party, it turned out that the Dutch warships in the British Far East colony of Sri Lanka Chagos archipelago in recent days have made Britain nervous. The British Ministry of Defence said on September 3 that the 5 Dutch warships began to sail north from Jakarta, the largest city in the Dutch East Indies, at 9 a.m. on August 27, 1868, and began to pass through the British territory of Malacca, Singapore, the westernmost coast of Sumatra, and arrived at Banda Aceh port for repairs. After entering the northeastern Indian Ocean and following the British Cabur Islands, they began to circle Sri Lanka and the Chagos archipelago. The British Ministry of Defence was shocked by the news. According to the news released by the British Ministry of Defence Navy at 4 p.m. on September 2, on September 1, the Sri Lanka Island Navy monitored 5 Dutch warships in the Indian Ocean. After the 5 warships left the Chagos Islands at 11 a.m. on September 2, the fleet sailed towards Perth, west of the Australian continent. The 5 warships include a steam battleship Jakarta and 3 fifth-level sailing warships and a third-level sailing battleship. For this purpose, the British Indian Ocean Fleet dispatched a fleet including the Sri Lanka sailing battleship to monitor and collect intelligence on the Kingdom of the Netherlands Fleet IV. The Financial Times reported that the Dutch Ministry of Defence announced that a large-scale naval exercise involving 20 Dutch warships was held in Haju, between northern Australia and southern Dutch East Indies in the Indian Ocean this month. According to British Ministry of Defence officials, the 5 Dutch warships seem to be participating in this exercise. At present, the British Ministry of Defence is continuing to analyse the purpose of this Dutch voyage and remain vigilant and more surveillance of the Dutch Navy in the Indian Ocean. To this end, British Prime Minister Disraeli said at a press conference at 10 Downing Street that the British Empire expressed concern about this and that the British Navy's Indian Ocean Fleet would continue to be vigilant and monitor. Regarding the increasingly expanded military activities of the Kingdom of the Netherlands Navy in the Indian Ocean, the British Navy is conducting vigilance, surveillance and intelligence collection. We are concerned about the overall activities of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in the areas surrounding our British Far East colonies. We will monitor the relevant developments of the Kingdom of the Netherlands Navy on a basic basis and do our utmost to be vigilant and monitor the waters around our British jurisdiction. British Prime Minister Disraeli replied. In addition, the British Ministry of Defence said on the evening of September 1 that the British Navy has confirmed that a fleet of 5 Dutch warships has now arrived at Darwin Port in northern Australia. On the same day, when talking about the Dutch naval movements, British Foreign Secretary Bertrand Russell said that he was concerned about the military movements of the Netherlands and would continue to collect intelligence and be vigilant. Hurry to the British Foreign Office. This time the British Foreign Secretary and the Dutch Ambassador to the UK will hold a press conference. It is said that there will be a head-on dialogue. Don't miss their wonderful performance. The meeting between the two will be at 10 o'clock in the morning. It's only 9 o'clock now, it's still early. Yes, it seems that Britain and the Netherlands seem to be at odds. Britain is willing to privately support the Rothschild family's interference in the United States. Obviously, Britain has expected that the Netherlands will be dissatisfied, but it did not expect the Netherlands to react so quickly and fiercely. Who says it's not? Obviously the Dutch don't want to give up their advantageous position in the United States of America. That's right, there are countries that are willing to give up their vested power. What's more, the Netherlands is currently rising rapidly, and it has the shadow of a great power in Europe. If it can obtain the influence of the United States of America, then although the Netherlands' influence in Europe cannot catch up with the 6 European countries, it can offset the shortcomings of Europe with the blessing of the Far East, Africa and America. What's more, in recent years, the Netherlands has been operating the Nordic Alliance, with the assistance of Sweden and Denmark, and the Duchy of Nassau and the Duchy of Luxembourg under the Nassau Orange family are under the rule of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. In addition, William III, the father of King William IV of the Netherlands, is currently the king of the Kingdom of Greece. With such mutual blessing, who dares to ignore the influence of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Europe? Haven't you seen that powerful countries like France and Prussia are pampering the Netherlands? Brother, you said it very well. Which newspaper are you from? I'm Roy from the Crown newspaper of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Yes, brother, you spoke brilliantly. I am Luxon from Le Figaro in the French Empire. You are too polite. I am Merck from the New York Times in the United States. You three are all knowledgeable people. Let's go. I am Sappho from the Spanish Vanguard in the Kingdom of Spain. Colleagues, please speed up. London does not allow people to ride horses and can only walk to their Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's really strange. So under the urging of the reporter of the Spanish Vanguard, several people and their colleagues next to them accelerated to the British Ministry of Foreign Affairs 2 kilometers away. On September 1, 1868, the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs expressed some dissatisfaction with Britain's intervention in the internal affairs of the United States at an ordinary press conference. Dutch Foreign Minister Chancellor Van Hall said that he did not understand why Britain intervened in the internal management of the United States. In this regard, the British Empire Foreign Ministry was very dissatisfied. The spokesperson of the country's Ministry of Foreign Affairs publicly stated that the Netherlands should not criticize Britain's policy towards the United States, and the Netherlands had no right to criticize the foreign policy of the British Empire. Against this backdrop, on September 4, 1868, British Foreign Secretary Bertrand Russell personally summoned Dutch Ambassador to the United Kingdom Michael Davis, and the two had a surprising argument at a face-to-face press conference outside the British Foreign Office headquarters. The argument started at 10 a.m. that day, and it was Bertrand Russell, the British Foreign Secretary, who took the lead. British Foreign Secretary Russell, the British Empire is based on partnership and respect for each other's interests, while the Netherlands implements coercive diplomacy and retaliates against other countries at will. We in the British Empire are very dissatisfied with this and believe that the Netherlands should not impose sanctions on other countries including the French Empire, and return a clean and fair competition environment to Europe. Minister Russell's words made the reporters from various countries present stunned. This 76-year-old British diplomat is still so brave. However, as a rising star in the Dutch diplomatic and political arena, Mike Davis, who has already made a name for himself in Europe, how could he easily compromise? So many reporters present were also looking forward to his counterattack. Chapter 427, The Virtues of Europe. Which of the great powers is more despicable? I don't agree with the Foreign Secretary's statement. The British Empire is the inventor and master of coercive diplomacy. Under the operation of you and your colleague, the European offshore balancer, the situation in Europe has been under the British helm for more than 100 years. Over the years, Britain has demonstrated textbook cases of coercive diplomacy to the world through economic blockades, unilateral sanctions and other means. From 1830 to 1839, under the promotion and coercion of UN Viscount Palmerston, don't forget that the Kingdom of Belgium was dug out of the Netherlands to establish a country. Therefore, we have the most say in Britain's coercive diplomacy. Britain's means are memorable. Wow! The Dutch diplomatic rising star did not disappoint. He immediately counterattacked the point that Foreign Secretary Russell had just attacked the Netherlands. Good guy, he directly used the ironclad fact that Viscount Palmerston, the British diplomatic strongman, was famous for pushing Belgium to break away from Dutch rule, to slap Russell in the face. It was really sharp. Don't say it, people are speaking with facts. Mike Davis ignored Russell's unhappy face and continued, in order to intervene in Norwegian affairs and separate this Nordic coastal region in the north of the UK, the British Empire actually coerced King Carl XVI of Sweden to support the Norwegians' desire to conduct more overseas transactions with Britain, and further the Norwegian government's independence from Swedish rule. In the end, it had to give up under the strong opposition of Stockholm. I want to ask the Foreign Minister, how to explain these shady coercive behaviors of the British Empire. How to explain. The reporters below quickly moved their pens, quickly recording the confrontation between the two people, accurately using all the letters, and at the same time, modifying the tone and adding the exaggeration that the news always uses. Many people have already thought of a lot of headlines. Roy from the Austro-Hungarian Empire's crown, in the diplomatic confrontation between Britain and the Netherlands, who is better at coercion? Merck from the New York Times of the United States of America, in terms of European virtues, which great power is more despicable? Luxon from the Le Figaro of the French Empire, who is worse? Britain or the Netherlands? Sappho from the Spanish vanguard of the Kingdom of Spain, should Spain join the ranks of coercing others? Other newspapers also follow their usual thinking of publishing, and based on the wonderful beginning of the two people, they wrote a flowery summary without mercy. The conversation between the two people started with an extremely surprising beginning in the eyes of newspaper reporters, and they all had more expectations for the next two people's fight. Russell was also stunned by Mike Davis' counterattack, and then angry. Do you really think that our British Empire is easy to bully? What a Dutch diplomat, just in London, the home of the British Empire, he was so rude to him, the chief diplomat of British diplomacy. In this case, the gentleman is meaningless. British Foreign Secretary Russell then countered, it has been said for a long time that there are 6 major powers in Europe, namely Britain, France, Tsarist Russia, Austria-Hungary, Ottoman Empire and Prussia. The current struggle of the Netherlands seems to pose the most severe and long-term challenge to this international order that everyone agrees on, and is undermining the international order. As a major power with many interests on both the sea and land in the world, Britain will defend the international morality, international peace structure agreements and diplomatic principles of various countries based on these 6 major powers to maintain world peace and security and protect the rights and interests of countries around the world including Britain. Here, I call on the Kingdom of the Netherlands to make more contributions to peace in Europe and even the world, rather than the opposite. Breaking the European order? Britain defends this order, so it is willing to have a dispute with the Netherlands? Russell's statement made the reporters as excited as sharks that smelled blood and suddenly discovered a new world. The British Foreign Secretary seemed to mean that Britain was not ready to accept the Netherlands as the 7th major power outside the 6 major powers. Even the meaning was very straightforward, wanting the Netherlands to give up its ambitions. Will the Netherlands agree? Who are the reporters present? They are the trump cards of their respective newspapers. They are extremely politically sensitive, otherwise they would not be the trump cards of their respective newspapers. So they quickly realized that this was a trap set by Foreign Secretary Russell for the Netherlands. Despite this, they had to admit that Russell was indeed an old diplomatic master. Although he was suppressed by Viscount Palmerston before, no one would deny his status and means in the British diplomatic community. Mike Davis retorted, the truth is that the international order that the Foreign Secretary keeps talking about is actually an order that serves Britain's own interests and maintains Britain's maritime hegemony. Now many people in Europe question whether Britain is the biggest source of chaos in Europe and even the world order, and Europe's troublemaker. The Dutch ambassador to the UK also said, the Netherlands has been and will be the defender of European order. Foreign Secretary Russell, don't forget that the Netherlands is the founder of many international alliances, and we are also the leader of multilateral organizations. The Netherlands established the International Labour Union to safeguard the rights and interests of workers around the world, and at the same time help capital factories and workers establish channels to reduce conflicts. The Netherlands established the International Women's League to reduce gender discrimination and demand rights for all women in the world. The Netherlands also established the International Hague Court, which provides the best and fairest tool for the world to govern by law and regulate international disputes according to law. I would like to ask Sir Russell, compared with a British warship coercive diplomacy, what is wrong with the Netherlands? The Netherlands has always maintained the international system with these international institutions as the core, and the International Court of Justice in The Hague as the basis of international law. These international organizations created by the Netherlands have been accepted by various countries and are eager to join. I don't understand why the UK thinks that the Netherlands intends to undermine the international order, when we are clearly strengthening the international order. At present, the Netherlands has been recognized by many countries around the world. The International Court of Justice in The Hague was created by the Netherlands. Sweden, Denmark, Greece, Belgium, Portugal, Spain, Italy, Argentina, Brazil, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, the United States of America, and other countries have joined. At present, the Ottoman Empire and others have submitted applications to join, so you may have misunderstood the Netherlands. The Netherlands is really the most international member that maintains the international order. On the contrary, the UK currently seems to be taking a diplomatic route of independence and outside the European family. It seems too lonely and out of touch with the world. I suggest that the British Empire join the International Court of Justice in The Hague, a world-class organization that has gone beyond the scope of Europe, Because Britain's status as a world power is more representative in it, and Britain can exert international influence. Mike Davis's suggestion stunned everyone. They had never seen an opponent who cared so much about the enemy. Because of this, would the British believe his kindness? British Foreign Secretary Russell did not believe it. He had already begun to calculate the intentions of the Dutch ambassador in front of him. Chapter 428, What a Dutch Ambassador. The diplomatic quarrel between British Foreign Secretary Russell and Dutch ambassador to the UK Mike Davis in London made the international media very excited. From the beginning, the two quickly entered the direction expected by reporters from major newspapers, making the entire public venue unusually quiet. When Mike Davis kindly suggested that the British Empire should join the International Court of Justice in The Hague established by the Netherlands to help Britain increase its international influence, everyone in the British Foreign Office looked at the most influential Dutch ambassador in the Netherlands, who was only 38 years old, in disbelief. The kindness of the Dutch ambassador made people confused. It was precisely because of this confusion that people felt that it seemed to contain evil intentions. No one believed that his good intentions were sincere. British Foreign Secretary Russell was also an international diplomatic expert who had experienced many ups and downs, so he reacted very quickly. At this time, he had to sigh that he almost suffered from his tricks. Davis's words just now instantly made the image of the Netherlands positive. Even the London newspapers might find it difficult to continue to be vigilant. Of course, that was when the British government did not remind him. First, he criticized and suppressed the glorious diplomacy of Britain's isolation, and then kindly said that the Netherlands was willing to help Britain return to the European collective diplomatic team. It seemed to help Britain, but in fact it was pointing out the unsociability of British diplomacy. It was a real and thorough counterattack against Britain's previous attack on the Netherlands' intention to change the European order. So, he naturally would not let the Dutch ambassador take the cake and let Britain owe him a favor. Thank you for the Kingdom of the Netherlands' idea of helping the British Empire, but the communication channels between the British Empire and the European countries are very smooth. Although we may lag behind the Netherlands in multilateral communication, we are better at bilateral relations. The ambassador should know that bilateral relations between the two countries are often more beneficial to larger countries. Therefore, the British Foreign Office will continue the British diplomatic tradition of focusing on bilateral relations, rather than multilateral diplomacy. Foreign Secretary Russell made it clear that in dealing with European countries, Britain has always been the strongest party in the scope of bilateral relations, which is Britain's advantage and is more conducive to the British side in negotiations. If it is a multilateral occasion, it will be very disadvantageous for the British negotiations. After all, the opponent that the British need to face is no longer 1 to 2, but 1 to 2 or even 1 to 3. This is to make up for one's shortcomings. Mike Davis smiled indifferently, showing his calm side in front of all the reporters. This made people feel that the Dutch ambassador to the UK was extremely calm and worthy of being a rising star in the Dutch diplomatic community, and they immediately had a good impression of him. He smiled slowly and said, although big countries are in an advantageous position in bilateral relations, smaller countries are more willing to conduct collective negotiations in multilateral occasions. This is why the Netherlands created these organizations. What we want is to support the weaker party. Back to the original intention of the establishment of multilateral organizations, the International Women's League is so supportive of weak women, and the International Court of Justice in The Hague also wants to uphold justice in accordance with the law regardless of the size of the country, which is fairer to small countries. The International Labor Union is more suitable to provide a layer of protection for the protection of labor rights when there are disputes between capitalists and workers. Hearing Mike Davis' words, his image of being righteous, upholding justice, and helping the weak instantly became full, and his image and the Netherlands' image immediately established an image of justice in the hearts of all people, including the media. Russell and British diplomats immediately thought it was not good. Especially the sensitive Russell, who suddenly found that Britain and him had become the background board and the stepping stone for Mike Davis and the Netherlands to establish their image. As expected, when Russell saw the international reporters present looking at Mike Davis, many of them showed strange admiration. What a hypocrite. He really knows how to use different things to glorify himself and the Netherlands. At this point, the former British Prime Minister and current Foreign Secretary had to admit that Mike Davis had grown into an opponent who could arm wrestle with him, at least he could compete with him in terms of verbal skills. As for the other aspects, he might be a little immature, but that was secondary. After all, Diplomats use verbal skills to achieve their goals, right? Mike Davis looked at Foreign Secretary Russell with a gentle smile, and seemed to be happy that he had suppressed Ross, a powerful British diplomat. But people also felt that this was respect for the opponent. He was really a contradictory person who is difficult to guess. Russell looked at the atmosphere in the conference hall of the British Foreign Ministry. Obviously, Mike Davis was a bit bullying the host at this moment. This made Russell understand that he needed to adjust some of his original plans at this moment. So he looked at Mike Davis with a kind smile of a 76-year-old man and said, "The British Empire is naturally not opposed to multilateral organizations. In fact, the British Foreign Office is currently discussing whether to join the International Court of Justice in The Hague, but it is still in the consultation period and it will take some time to get a result." Everyone was surprised. Russell's words let everyone present know that obviously, the helmsman of British diplomacy began to give in. When facing the Dutch ambassador this time, Britain chose to take a step back after a fight. Obviously, Mike Davis won in the first round. So everyone looked at him, wanting to see his expression, but when their eyes fell on him, they found that he was very indifferent, just as indifferent as when he entered the British press conference just now. He was really a gentleman who was not surprised by praise or criticism. The reporters all sighed in their hearts. What a great Dutch ambassador. This batch of ambassadors in Amsterdam is really good. It is said that there are several people who are similar to Mike Davis in front of us. I don't know how the others are, but they can be compared with each other, so they should not be much worse. I have to say that the Netherlands has a lot of diplomatic talents this time. In comparison, the British have many high-level talents, but they are a little lacking in the middle level. It is said that William IV of the Netherlands has established a diplomatic academy called the Diplomatic Academy. Should the British Foreign Office also establish one based on this? However, the budget is a problem. Russell thought that the Whig party he was in was the opposition party. Obviously, the Tory party where Prime Minister Disraeli was should oppose it. After all, they would not allow the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to fall into his hands, let alone control the lower levels of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thinking of this, Russell's heart sank slightly. Chapter 429, Troublemaker. Suddenly, Mike Davis asked angrily, "It is rumored that the British Empire is suppressing emerging countries such as the Kingdom of the Netherlands. As the head of the British Foreign Office, what do you think, Sir Russell?" Mike Davis's question was extremely sharp, which made the reporters present very grateful because this question was exactly what they wanted to ask. However, they would ask it later, but the effect would naturally not be as good as the one asked by the Dutch ambassador. Therefore, Mike Davis really captured the hearts of the reporters at this press conference today. Russell's face changed at first, but he recovered quickly. He said, "The British Empire does not seek diplomatic conflicts with the Netherlands or a warlike conflict with the Netherlands. Of course, we do not want a dispute of sanctions. We do not seek to prevent the Netherlands from playing the role of a great power, nor do we seek to prevent the Netherlands from developing its economy and promoting the development of relations between the Netherlands and its neighboring countries." Russell said this, and he smiled and said, "Otherwise, when the Kingdom of the Netherlands began to reform in 1857, Britain could have taken action to prevent the development of the Dutch economy. Otherwise, the Netherlands would have formed alliances with neighboring countries again and again in the past few years. In fact, Britain could have exchanged interests and put the Netherlands in a passive position in its neighboring relations. Otherwise, the Netherlands would not have such a good environment and developed a per capita income that exceeded that of the British Empire. Moreover, our great Queen Victoria would not have given Australia in the Far East to the Netherlands, allowing the Netherlands to obtain an extremely valuable development base in the Far East. Well, according to what the Netherlands said, it is the second life of the Netherlands, and it is a life with great potential and vitality. It was Britain that gave the Netherlands such a good environment, and it was Britain that gave the Netherlands another precious life. Therefore, in the face of these ironclad evidences, who dares to say that the British Empire wants to stop the development of the Netherlands, prevent the rise of the Netherlands, and interrupt the Netherlands' promotion to a great power? As the British Foreign Secretary Russell said four things, each of them stunned the people present. Even Mike Davis's face changed. Davis had to admit that he was a little hero. Although Russell in front of him had always been suppressed by his peers, such as Metternich and Viscount Palmerston in the European and international arena, both of them had left the world before him. At present, in Europe, only the newly rising Prussian Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Bismarck can compete with him. Of course, This is a battle of reputation in the diplomatic confrontation between the great powers. In fact, Davis believes that his Foreign Minister Hesbert van and Prime Minister Thorbecke of the Kingdom of the Netherlands are no worse than the other two, and William IV is unconditionally crushing them both, although this is due to his own identification with the Dutch background. The contest between British Foreign Secretary Russell and the Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to the British Empire Mike Davis in London first caused a sensation in Europe. The fight between the two people over the diplomatic interests and image of the two countries had a taste of duel. This has aroused interest from all over Europe. This diplomatic press conference held in the British Foreign Office and co-hosted by the Netherlands, as the participating global newspaper reporters sent telegrams back to their respective countries. The details of the press conference were immediately presented to the global newspapers in the form of newspaper reports. Everyone was very excited. This foreign policy press conference between Britain and the Netherlands was the first time in the world that the two foreign ministries held such an event publicly, and it received far more attention than before. Because of this, Britain and the Netherlands benefited a lot from this event. The two countries each elaborated on their own foreign policies, allowing the world to get a glimpse of the whole picture. Although the top leaders of other countries seriously doubted that these passive issues might be just a public relations event between the two countries, it did not prevent others from appreciating it except them. After all, just before this event, the Netherlands had just bypassed Sri Lanka and the Chagos Islands of Britain in the Far East. This provocation to the West, are the Netherlands and Britain playing a double act? What's more, Britain and the Netherlands are both arguing over the issue of the United States of America because of the Rothschild family. The competition between the two countries for influence in the United States is in full swing, so how can they cooperate secretly? Isn't this nonsense? In short, conspiracy theories and anti-conspiracy theories have also been hotly discussed because of this incident. It was under such circumstances that James Rothschild sent his son to London to meet his nephew Lionel Rothschild. Lionel, you know, my father, your uncle is very concerned about the situation in London, so he sent me to find out. You know, the whole of Europe is discussing the complicated relationship between Britain and the Netherlands. At this time, our Rothschild family is confronting the Netherlands in North America. My father is worried that our Rothschild family has fallen into someone else's trap. Edmund Rothschild showed worry on his face. The financial prince of James Rothschild, the financial emperor of the French Empire, was far less calm than in Paris. His worries showed his inner chaos. It must be said that this meeting hosted by the British Foreign Ministry and the Dutch Foreign Ministry was confusing. All of this made the entire Rothschild family a little uneasy. Therefore, as the only surviving person in the second generation of the Rothschild family, James Rothschild sent his son Edmund from Paris to London to understand the situation. At the same time, he also showed his willingness to lend a helping hand to his nephew, trying to make the London upper class understand the unity of the European Rothschild family. Lionel Rothschild frowned and said, "Number 10 Downing Street should not only oppose the Rothschild family's development of power in North America, but I don't know about the Ministry of Foreign Affairs." Edmund Rothschild's heart moved when he heard this. "Lionel, what you mean is that the Whig Party may have some kind of tacit understanding with the Netherlands. It should be said that it is the channel left by the former Prime Minister Viscount Palmerston that allows the Netherlands and the Whig Party to have a strong relationship." Lionel said meaningfully, "Buckingham Palace's intention is also unclear." Edmund Rothschild stared at the boss for a long time. That is to say, the royal family seems unwilling to offend Amsterdam too much, the Whigs do not agree to overforce the Netherlands, and the Tories lean towards us. Yes, Edmund, you can go back and tell Uncle James so. When the British and French public opinion was questioning the British and Dutch diplomatic activities, a spoiler appeared. It turned out that in the Indian Ocean, the Prussian Kingdom Navy, which owned a Somali colony, went south and arrived at Madagascar Island. After circling the island, it calmly passed through the Strait of Magellan and arrived in the southern Atlantic Ocean. Southwest Africa, the colony of Prussia. When this news came, the world's attention immediately shifted from the English Channel to Berlin and Amsterdam. Chapter 430 Prussian warships threatened the Netherlands. 3 Prussian sailing battleships appeared in Southeast Africa and the eastern part of the Mozambique Channel in the Southwest Indian Ocean, and sailed around Madagascar for a week. On September 5, 1868, the largest European newspaper, Europe Times, reported that according to the Dutch Ministry of Defense, the 3 Prussian battleships sailed south from northern Somalia on September 3, passing through the British colony of the Seychelles, the Dutch overseas territories of Kenya, Tanzania and the Comoros Islands of the Netherlands, and entered the Mozambique Channel between the Dutch North Mozambique and Madagascar. When the local Dutch army thought that the Prussian fleet just wanted to pass through the channel, they never thought that the Prussian fleet would choose to sail eastward along the coast of Madagascar for a week after passing through the Mozambique Channel for the second time, and then went south through the Strait of Magellan where the Cape of Good Hope in British South Africa is located and left. The Dutch Navy stationed on Madagascar Island and North Mozambique monitored and collected intelligence on the actions of the Prussian fleet. According to the Dutch Daily, the Dutch Ministry of Defense announced on the 5th that it was confirmed that 2 Prussian warships fired artillery fire for more than 1.5 hours in the waters 20 kilometers outside the port of Rotterdam when passing through the Sea of Rotterdam, the largest city in the south of the Netherlands. After firing artillery fire, the 2 Prussian warships sailed southward through the English Channel and entered the Mediterranean Sea from the Strait of Gibraltar after passing through the English Channel. It is said that they are preparing to arrive in Somalia for garrison after passing through the Suez Canal. The Dutch Ministry of Defense announced on September 5 that it confirmed the provocative behavior of the 2 Prussian naval warships appearing simultaneously on the island of Madagascar and outside the port of Rotterdam. This has triggered the Dutch Ministry of Defense to strengthen the protection and vigilance of the Netherlands and overseas territories. At the same time, the Chief of the General Staff of the Netherlands, His Excellency Mark Rutte, has personally sent a telegram to the Chief of the General Staff of the Kingdom of Prussia, Moltke, questioning the provocative behavior of the Kingdom of Prussia. The Netherlands is currently waiting for Prussia's response. Shortly after the Dutch Ministry of Defense released the news on September 5, 1868, at the routine diplomatic press conference of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs on September 6, 1868, Dutch Foreign Minister Hesbert van directly accused Prussia, "I don't understand why Prussia is provoking the Netherlands at this time, and I don't understand what benefit Prussia has gained by doing so. But there is one thing I can make clear to my Prussian colleagues, the Netherlands is very firm in its position on defending its national territory. If there is any act that dares to invade the territory of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, we will fight back without hesitation." When a reporter asked how the Netherlands would fight back, Hesbert van said meaningfully, "The Netherlands is not the Kingdom of Hanover that was invaded by Prussia, nor is it the Kingdom of Bavaria, nor is it the weak Kingdom of Denmark in the past few years. The Netherlands has a set of military measures that are enough to resist invaders, and our military reforms are enough to resist the invasion of major powers. Believe me, the Netherlands can protect itself. Of course, if a major power really goes to war with the Netherlands with all its strength, I think that perhaps the European mainland will be occupied, but the Netherlands will also make the major power pay a very, very high price. Perhaps after invading the Netherlands, the major power will split into several countries from now on." When the reporter continued to ask what the foreign minister meant, Hesbert van said with a smile, "You know, the German Confederation is composed of several countries." After that, Hesbert van did not go deeper. But it did not prevent the people present from being full of reverie. So the pens on their notebooks slid quickly. The Netherlands believes that under the current integration policy of the Kingdom of Prussia, although it has temporarily suppressed the countries of the original German Confederation from breaking away from Prussian rule, the Netherlands warns that if Prussia invades the Netherlands, the probability that these original countries will take the opportunity to break away from the Kingdom of Prussia will be unprecedented. From the French Empire's Le Figaro on September 7, 1868. The Netherlands warns that Prussia's current provocation is very dangerous. Hesbert van said that the Netherlands is capable of resisting any invasion from Prussia. From the British Empire's Financial Times on September 7, 1868. Dutch Foreign Minister Hesbert van responded to the news of the Dutch Ministry of Defense that the Netherlands will conduct preventive military exercises on the entire Dutch territory, the main purpose of which is to prevent the stupid behavior that may be made by ambitious people in other countries. From the Italian Kingdom's Milan News on September 7, 1868. European countries are experiencing sudden changes. First, the Netherlands' leader around Sri Lanka and the Chagos Islands in the British Far East has caused a stir in Europe. Then, the Prussian fleet is leader around Madagascar, a Dutch overseas territory in the southwest Indian Ocean, and at the same time, it is conducting artillery exercises 20 kilometers away from the port of Rotterdam in the Netherlands. The sudden joining of Prussia has made the situation in Europe even more confusing. The relationship between Britain, the Netherlands and Prussia is complicated. There are rumors that Britain seems to be supporting the Rothschild family in the UK to launch a financial attack on the United States of America, and the Dutch President Andrew is resisting. The Kingdom of the Netherlands is helping the United States of America to defend. At this time, Prussia's move means that the Frankfurt Rothschild family in Prussia has also joined in urging the Prussian government in Berlin to join the ranks of the British government. It is said that James Rothschild sent his son Edmund Rothschild to London not long ago. This is obviously a clear declaration of family unity. Perhaps in the near future, everyone will see that European countries will take anti-Dutch confrontation under the pressure of the financial hegemony of the Rothschild family. Where the United States of America will go in the future has already caused a lot of debate in the United States of America, from the pro-German newspaper San Francisco Times in the United States of America. Newspapers from various countries are like sharks smelling fishy smells, rushing to report related news, which makes the world feel like a storm is coming. At this time, a piece of news surprised all countries. On September 10th, a message came that the British Indian Ocean Fleet actually sent out 10 warships, especially the British even dispatched an Indian Ocean steam battleship. After heading south all the way to northern Australia from September 4th, they began to choose to circle the Australian continent before choosing to stop in the British overseas colony of New Zealand. At this time, Britain actually followed Prussia and also circumnavigated the Netherlands by sea. However, when I thought about the Dutch circumnavigating the British Islands before, I felt relieved. Chapter 431, British, French and Prussian troops divided into 3 groups to encircle the Netherlands. At the same time, the French Empire's fleet stationed in South Vietnam in the Far East also began to sail westward from the Strait of Malacca in the northern part of the Dutch East Indies, and chose to go south after arriving at Banda Aceh along the island of Sumatra, sailing all the way along the Dutch East Indies, and finally arriving in the eastern part of New Guinea before heading north, passing through the Sulu Sea between the Spanish colony of the Philippines and the British colony of Malaya, and returning to the French military port in South Vietnam. After the news came out, it caused a shock in Europe, which was absolutely unprecedented. If the previous actions of Prussia made people feel that it was an unreasonable provocation, then the actions of Britain and the French Empire now seem more like a coordinated coercion. You must know that the French fleet is provoking the northern part of the Far East Netherlands, which has always claimed to be the second life, and it is also the earliest colony of the Netherlands in the Far East. The French Empire's actions are undoubtedly challenging the core interests of the Netherlands. During this period, the French Empire has been sanctioned by the International Hague Court, led by the Netherlands, and has been full of anger. Many people analyze that this is likely to be a coincidental provocation by the French Empire. It should not have been discussed with Britain in advance, and it would not cooperate with Prussia in fighting. But some people also believe that this is a secret collusion between Britain, France and Prussia, which was completed under the mediation of the Rothschild family. The purpose is to warn the Netherlands not to get involved too deeply in North America. New and old hatreds can also make countries give up some hostility and choose to put pressure on the Netherlands together to obtain immediate benefits. This is the view of some European politicians. After all, in the eyes of many people, there is no love or hate without reason. The Netherlands has been so popular recently that it has made all major countries extremely jealous. The Netherlands' economic and defense strength is enough to threaten the status of the 6 major European countries. These have made these major countries see in the international organizations established by the Netherlands that the privileges traditionally obtained by major countries have been restricted and their power has been weakened in disguise, which makes many traditional conservatives very dissatisfied. Therefore, the Netherlands, as the leader, naturally became the target of suppression, and the international influence of the Netherlands was hit, and the influence of the Netherlands in the United States of America became the first target. Therefore, many people speculate that the Netherlands may suffer heavy losses in the Americas, especially the United States of America and North America, under such extreme pressure. Because of this, many people are not optimistic that the Netherlands will choose to resist the 3 major European countries while exerting pressure. Many people are even more curious about whether the remaining Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire in Vienna, the 6 major European countries, will join the ranks of Britain, France and Prussia. Among the 3 countries, the Rothschild family has very little influence in the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire, especially the Ottoman Empire, which hates the Rothschild family the most. Don't forget that Jerusalem, which is currently ruled by the Ottoman Empire, is the capital of the Jewish country. The Ottoman Empire is very wary of the idea of Jewish restoration. It is said that every year, Jews in various parts of Europe will hold an event against Constantinople, conspiring with European countries to collectively suppress the international influence of the Ottoman Empire. For example, Britain, although due to the geographical location of the Ottoman Empire, Britain and the Ottoman Empire became allies, Britain still secretly weakened the other side. The Kingdom of Greece was successfully restored from the rule of the Ottoman Empire under the advice of the three major countries of the Russian Empire, the French Empire and the Austrian Empire, despite the opposition of the Ottoman Empire and with the support of Britain. Therefore, the Ottoman Empire was afraid that the Jews would become the next Greek kingdom, so it would never support the Rothschild family, the richest family among the Jews. Therefore, it can be said that the Ottoman Empire would never support this anti-Dutch action. Some people even speculated that perhaps it would be close to the Netherlands. The royal family of the Tsarist Russian Empire has also been guarding against the influence of the Jews in the Tsarist Russian Empire. Alexander II inherited the practice of Nicholas I while using the capital of the Jews. He also hollowed out their potential politically, making them a vampire that everyone shouted and beat in the Tsarist Russian Empire, and their reputation was ruined. So the Tsarist Russian Empire should not support it either. The rest is the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The country's attitude is extremely ambiguous. On the one hand, Vienna is one of the 5 major branches of the Rothschild family, and the financial currency and national debt of the Austrian Empire are in the hands of the Rothschild family. However, as the Kingdom of Hungary became an equal member of the dual system with the Austrian Empire, Hungary is a country that opposes Jews. Therefore, Franz Joseph I is very troubled by the pressure from the Rothschild family in Vienna, but he is afraid of angering Hungary. Therefore, the Austro-Hungarian Empire has not made any statement at present. In Vienna, Franz Joseph I was very troubled. Since this month, the Netherlands has been encircling the British Movement Islands. Vienna's rival Berlin has been restless encircling Madagascar Island. After that, the United Kingdom circumnavigated the Australian continent. Napoleon II of the French Empire sent the South Vietnamese fleet to circumnavigate the Dutch East Indies at the same time. These 4 parties have jointly taken action and completed large-scale naval voyages in the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean in just half a month. Joseph I envied the huge navies of the 4 countries. In the past, Prussia was not as good as the Austrian Empire in terms of navy, but the speed of launching ships like dumplings in recent years made the Austro-Hungarian Empire very envious. The Netherlands has brought it upon itself. It actually helped improve Prussia's naval technology, but now it is being bitten back. Franz Joseph I finally gave up making any moves. In his opinion, it was still the most cost-effective foreign policy to keep a secret and mutter to Austria-Hungary without sending a single soldier. Amsterdam, Netherlands, England, Prussia and France are each making a circle in the Far East, dividing their forces into 3 groups to encircle and pinch the Netherlands in the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean in the Far East. The actions of the 3 countries are obviously a kind of collaboration, and we have to guard against such actions being prepared in advance. Therefore, in the face of the hostile and vicious behavior faced by the Netherlands this time, we need to respond quickly and effectively. Ladies and gentlemen, the development of the Netherlands has reached a bottleneck, and the roadblock in front of us has already appeared. At present, it seems that in terms of politics and military, there are major powers such as Britain, France and Prussia, as well as the Rothschild family, whose influence in the capital and financial circles has spilled over. Therefore, no matter what we do now, we need to fight back, and we need to fight back hard and hurt. Only by defeating the opponent can we be reborn, and we may even gain the status of a great power in one fell swoop. As I said before, perhaps after this time, the Netherlands will have decades of peaceful development opportunities, provided that it overcomes this difficulty. The opportunity for you to witness the rise of the Netherlands is right in front of you. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 432 William IV, No One Can Bully Us. 1868. The main industries in the Dutch Far East were concentrated in several important areas. Among them, due to political and geographical factors, the main areas of the Dutch East Indies were divided into Palembang Tanjungkalan in the south of Sumatra, focusing on palm oil and rice. Jakarta Semarang Yogyakarta Surabaya on Java Island is mainly a light industrial commercial trade turnover center in Southeast Asia. Ujung Pungdong on Sulawesi Island is mainly for underground trade and auction houses that are not visible to the light, because it is close to the Sulu Sea where pirates are prevalent. The Fak Babovaksan Terraversal Industrial Zone around the Bura Bay in the north of New Guinea Island is the military industrial chain factory of the Dutch East India Company. Darukakori Kari Mabirina Port Moresby and the Solomon Sea Ring in the industrial belt around the Papua Bay in the south of New Guinea Island is mainly engaged in seafood processing factories. In addition to being the most important Far East political centre formed by Melbourne, Canberra, Sydney, the southeastern part of the Australian continent is also the industrial, capital, technology, and financial centre of the Far East. Today, it is the most important technological innovation centre in the Netherlands, and the largest financial and capital centre after Amsterdam. The scale of heavy industry development here exceeds that of the mainland, and the light industry has long surpassed that of the mainland. The Spencer Gulf military-industrial belt in South Australia, centred on Adelaide, is mainly based on the industrial chain dominated by the Far East Weapons Company. It is one of the 4 major shipbuilding centres in the Netherlands, second only to Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and Maden in the Bura Bay of New Guinea. Maden seems to be a latecomer, surpassing Amsterdam and Rotterdam. In addition, the iron ore minerals brought by Perth in Western Australia form the steel industry and gold industry belt. The iron ore-rich steel industry belt driven by Darwin, the capital of Northern Australia, and the agricultural industry belt and coal industry belt formed by Brisbane and Rockhampton. All of the above industrial belts have established non-ferrous metal forging industries. There is no doubt that in the Industrial Revolution in the far east of the Netherlands, except for the Dutch East Indies and New Guinea in the north, which have been operated by the Netherlands for many years, the Australian continent has only been managed by the Netherlands for 7 years, and it is just starting. It has only been put into production for a few years. However, due to the large-scale capital and manpower support of the Dutch government, it has developed in a vivid and colorful way, and the construction boom has been booming, so it has shown a prosperous scene. Many European immigrants, including those from the Netherlands, were stunned by the prosperity and development progress here after they arrived, and then they were completely devoted to the construction boom and became one of them. There is no doubt that compared with Europe, this place is definitely a paradise for many people who have left their homes, and it is definitely a good place to belong. So they quickly integrated themselves into the local area and became one of them. These people do not allow anyone to destroy their hard-earned stable and prosperous life. However, on September 11, 1868, when local newspapers in Australia, the Dutch East Indies, and New Guinea, as well as local newspapers, reported that the British and French empires had sent fleets to their new homeland for the first time in history, many people were angry. Even many French and British people joined the angry team. In these places, many people even publicly demanded that the Dutch government condemn and protest against the actions of the two countries. Dutch citizens in Australia, the Dutch East Indies, and New Guinea took to the streets with banners and demonstrated against the provocations of Britain and France. Many local college students and social elites took the lead in demanding that the Dutch government not compromise with the threats of the two countries and demanded that the Dutch government maintain the dignity of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Subsequently, Prussia was also exposed for its provocative behavior on the African island of Madagascar and became the object of protest by these people. Even many natives from the Far East and Africa joined in. On September 13, 1868, King William IV of the Kingdom of the Netherlands was interviewed by the Australian Times, the largest newspaper in the Far East of the Netherlands, in his home country. He called on the people of the Far East to calm down. He said that the Dutch government would not do anything that would damage the dignity and interests of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and the Netherlands would not allow the Netherlands to be bullied. He said that the Netherlands would not accept coercion, and the Netherlands would not think that other countries could coerce the Netherlands. He warned that the Netherlands had many means and tools to fight back, and if any country tried to provoke the Far East of the Netherlands, then the Netherlands would respond unfriendly. This interview caused great cheers in the home country and the Far East. At the same time, the content of the interview with William IV also appeased the actions prepared by many radicals in the Far East and the home country. William IV also called on capitalists in the home region of the Netherlands and capitalists in the Far East to invest more, so that the Dutch people in the Far East can enjoy more tangible benefits as citizens of the King of the Netherlands. When the appeal made by King William IV spread in the Netherlands and the Far East, Capitalists in both the Netherlands responded one after another. Even some Dutch people in the United States of America crossed the Pacific Ocean to the Far East to participate in the investment boom brought about by William IV. Many years later, when people recalled the investment boom proposed by William IV, they were surprised to find that William IV's appeal actually led to more than £10 million of investment capital, and at the same time, the process of the Far East's economy catching up with the local economy was accelerated by more than 5 years. It took only 20 years to reach the level of local prosperity. At the same time, it also accelerated the pace of the transfer of local industries in the Netherlands to the Far East. Many politicians even said that if William IV had not taken advantage of the naval threat from Britain and France, he would not have used this opportunity to demonstrate a submarine threat incident in the Indian Ocean that was enough to shock the world, so that the Netherlands jumped to the position of the world's most mysterious naval military power. This is a later story. Back to the moment, William IV's interview quickly triggered mixed reactions from many people in Europe. The governments of Sweden and Denmark clearly expressed their support for the Kingdom of the Netherlands in safeguarding its own interests. They also said, without naming names, that big countries should not provoke small countries at will, which is immoral and unpopular. The two countries' position of supporting the Netherlands has remained unchanged. However, many people in Berlin, London, and Paris were full of sarcasm. They all ridiculed the Netherlands for not knowing its own strength, and William IV intended to promote the strength of the Netherlands. They all suspected that this was just a cover-up for the Dutch king's inner panic. Many national pride in these three countries called on Britain, France, and Prussia to strengthen their presence in the Far East and not let the Netherlands grow there. Chapter 433, Senior officials from Russia, the United States, Austria and Spain were invited to visit. Some people who are interested in the matter even suggested that the British and French navies temporarily abandon their prejudices and jointly suppress the Netherlands before fighting, or they could choose to cooperate in the Pacific Ocean, and the two navies could organize joint maritime cruises in the South China Sea and the Western Pacific. At the same time, many people even suggested that they could cruise with Prussia and France in the Indian Ocean. After all, Prussia currently occupies Somalia in the northwest of the Indian Ocean, and the French Empire occupies Mauritius and Reunion Island in the east of Madagascar. If the three countries cooperate in the Indian Ocean, it can threaten the connection between the Netherlands and Kenya, Tanzania, North Mozambique and Madagascar Island, and at the same time, it can also threaten the safety of the route from the Dutch African territory across the Indian Ocean to the Far East Australian continent and Sumatra. This will make the Netherlands devote more energy to the Far East in Africa, and also interrupt the Netherlands' strong position in these places, preventing Britain's superpower position in the Indian Ocean from being gradually squeezed northward by the Netherlands. At the same time, it is in the interests of the three countries to reduce the strength of the Netherlands in Europe. It must be said that these people's views are unique, and even arouse the recognition of many elites from the three countries. Of course, these people's statements caused a huge uproar after they were spread to the Netherlands. On September 15, 1868, the Dutch government stated that the activities of Britain and France around the Dutch territory in the Far East had become more frequent, and the Dutch garrison there had been alert. It was continuing to analyze the purpose of this voyage, and the Netherlands remained vigilant and monitored. The Dutch media commented that this was British, French and Prussian troops divided into three routes to encircle the Dutch Far East, and pointed out that such voyages would become the norm in the future. The Dutch media also reported that the Dutch East India Squadron dispatched two first-class sailing battleships, Sumatra and Java, and third-class sailing battleships such as Yogyakarta and Surabaya to monitor and collect intelligence on the French provocative fleet. In the direction of the Australian mainland, the headquarters of the Dutch Far East Fleet is in Adelaide in southern Australia. It dispatched three first-class sailing battleships, Western Australia, North Australia and South Australia, and three second-class sailing battleships, Perth, Darwin and Adelaide, to follow and supervise. It is worth mentioning that the British and Dutch fleets had several short confrontations outside the port cities of Perth, Western Australia, Adelaide, South Australia, and Sydney, and the British fleet eventually chose to leave. Although it is known that the Netherlands' statement has risen to the level of the king, no one from Britain, France, and Prussia has spoken out yet, which is very strange. This makes the outside world still imagine this action as always. The commentary pointed out that the Far East Fleet of the French Empire said, The fleet's exercise around the Dutch East Indies after passing through Malacca is just a routine exercise against imaginary enemies and islands. In fact, it is pointed out that this is just a counterattack against the Kingdom of the Netherlands' recent unfriendly attitude towards France, especially the Dutch-led sanctions against France some time ago. It believes that this is a warning from France to the Netherlands. The commentary also believes that the British approach is more of a counterattack. After all, it was the Netherlands that first detoured around the British Far East, which was just an excuse for Britain to fight back. The comment also mentioned that, don't forget, as early as 8 years ago, this was still a British overseas territory. The British-Australian fleet was second only to the Indian fleet in the Indian Ocean. This time, Britain's detour around Australia was not only a counterattack against the Netherlands, but also a reminder to the Netherlands that Australia was given to the Netherlands by Britain, so that the Netherlands should not forget this. As for Prussia, as the Prussian naval fleet became larger and larger, the quality and naval scale and technology improved and became more confident. The Prussian navy and formation continued to expand, so the overseas deployment would become more and more frequent. After all, the colonies around the world have been almost occupied by the old colonial powers such as Britain, France, the Netherlands, Portugal and Spain. At this time, Prussia was more of a display of strength, the purpose of which was to warn other countries not to touch Prussia's territory, and it also represented Prussia's ambition for overseas territories. Therefore, the comment believes that there may be private promotion in these three countries, but the interests of the government may not come together. The private sector here naturally refers to the Rothschild family, which monopolizes the financial system in various countries. From September 18 to 21, 1868, the prime ministers of Spain, the United States of America, the Ottoman Empire, and the Russian Empire visited Amsterdam in the Netherlands in succession over the past 4 days at the invitation of Dutch Prime Minister Talbach. Many members of the British, French, and Prussian parliaments regarded this as another game for the Netherlands to start operating diplomatic influence in Europe. However, many elites in the three countries pointed out that the Netherlands has had close exchanges with these countries in recent years, and high-level interactions have been more frequent than those of Britain, France, and Prussia. The Netherlands may not intend to show off its strength, and it is hard to say whether it wins or loses. Dutch Prime Minister Talbach met with Spanish Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez in Amsterdam on the 18th, and met with U.S. President Andrew Johnson on the 19th. On the 20th, he met with Prince Abdulvasi, Prime Minister of the Ottoman Empire, the younger brother of Sultan Abdulaziz I. On the 21st, Talbach met with Gorchakov, Prime Minister of the Russian Empire. According to a statement issued by the Dutch Prime Minister's office, the talks between Prime Minister Thorbecke and Spanish Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez mainly focused on deepening bilateral ties in Europe. The two countries agreed to establish economic ties between the Dutch East Indies and the Spanish Philippine Islands, and the Netherlands is willing to support Spain's economic development there to carry out bilateral cooperation. When meeting with Andrew Johnson, President of the Commonwealth of America, Thorbecke not only expressed his gratitude to the Commonwealth of America for its unwavering support for the Netherlands' diplomatic stance over the years, but also thanked the Commonwealth of America for its capital support for the Netherlands' Far East construction. Thorbecke and Andrew Johnson both expressed their desire to build political trust and mutually beneficial cooperation between the Netherlands and the United States. The two also emphasized that the Netherlands supports the Commonwealth of America in maintaining its sovereignty, financial independence, and territorial integrity, and the Netherlands supports the Commonwealth of America in exploring an economic development path that suits its national conditions. Andrew Johnson emphasized that the Netherlands is the main ally of the United States of America, and the United States will definitely support the position of the Netherlands. At the same time, the two countries also stated that they will have more exchanges in the economy and technology, and the two countries will also have more cooperation in finance. This makes people think a lot. After all, the Rothschild family seems to be trying to enter the United States of America. Prince Abdulvasi, Prime Minister of the Ottoman Empire, who was also invited to visit the Netherlands, met with Thorbecke on September 20th. Both of them expressed the need to strengthen cooperation between the two countries in the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean. Prime Minister Thorbecke said that the Netherlands is very grateful for Constantinople's support in trading the new territory of the United Arab Emirates to the Netherlands, and also expressed gratitude for the help and support provided by Constantinople to help the Netherlands rule there. The Netherlands is willing to support the diversification of the Ottoman Empire's diplomacy. Prince Abdülwasi, Prime Minister of the Ottoman Empire, expressed his gratitude for the economic support of the Netherlands to the Ottoman Empire and was willing to add new cooperation projects on the basis of the friendly relations between the two sides in the past. Thorbecke agreed with this and emphasized that the Netherlands will support the Ottoman Empire in establishing an economic development industry chain and become an intermediary medium for introducing the European economic model. Among them, he said that he would continue to help the Ottoman Empire explore and cooperate in other places of the Ottoman Empire based on the oil industry exploration discovered in the new territories of the Netherlands and Prussia in the Middle East. When meeting with the Prime Minister of the Russian Empire, Gorchakov, Thorbecke clearly expressed his gratitude for the diplomatic support of the Russian Empire in the past, and the cooperation between the two countries will be closer. Gorchakov agreed with this view, saying that the Russian Empire has always been the closest to the Netherlands in Europe, so the Russian Empire will continue to support the Netherlands. The two countries also said that they would have more cooperation in the Far East. The ice-free port of East Kalimantan, which the Netherlands traded to the Russian Empire, will be built with Dutch capital support. The two countries will have more cooperation in security. The two countries even agreed to conduct Dutch-Russian naval exercises in the Sulawesi Sea in the next few months. At the same time, the two countries confirmed the naval exchange visit mechanism between the two countries. The Netherlands will send warships to visit the port of Vladivostok in the far east of the Russian Empire next year, and the Russian Empire will send a fleet to visit the port of Adelaide, the headquarters of the Far East Fleet of the Netherlands on the Australian continent. The two countries clearly expressed their opposition to the interests of both sides being damaged by other countries, and will carry out necessary maintenance when the interests of the other party are damaged. As for how to maintain, it was not included in the statement. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands announced on September 23, 1868 that King William IV of the Netherlands had met with Spanish Prime Minister Ramón Narváez, President of the Commonwealth of America Andrew Johnson, Prime Minister of the Ottoman Empire Prince Abdülwasi, and Prime Minister of the Russian Empire Gorchakov on the 22nd, and all four were warmly welcomed by His Majesty William IV. Spanish Prime Minister Ramón Narváez conveyed the greetings of Queen Isabel II of Spain, Prince Abdülwasi conveyed the greetings of Sultan Abdulaziz I, and Prime Minister Gorchakov also conveyed the greetings of Alexander II. Dutch Foreign Minister Huspert van pointed out at the press conference of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that this visit reflects the close and friendly relations between the Netherlands and many major countries in the world and the high attention paid by all parties to promote the cooperation between the Netherlands and them. Many people in Britain, France and Prussia are very dissatisfied with the slow action of their governments. Some time ago, the French Empire even invited some countries, but some countries were unwilling to attend and postponed the visit, which reminded the outside world of France's current diplomatic dilemma. In Britain, some people believe that the British Empire should invite more high-level officials from various countries to visit London, because they believe that the Netherlands is seizing moral resources in diplomacy. They also believe that Britain will miss a major opportunity to defend its own interests if it does not do so. The leader of the British opposition Whig Party, former Prime Minister Claxton, issued a statement saying, while Prime Minister Disraeli is still struggling to arrange the schedule, the Dutch government has always focused on undermining Britain's influence around the world, especially in the Far East Indian Ocean, where Britain originally had a dominant interest. British Whig Conservative Senator Todd also complained to the British newspaper, Britain's diplomacy is delayed for one day, and the Netherlands can avoid challenges from Britain and European powers in this vital area for one day, and their development in the Far East is one day closer to us. Chapter 434 Coordinator for Atlantic Affairs, National Security Council of the Netherlands. However, Herman van Rompuy, the Dean of the Diplomatic Academy of Leiden University, the oldest university in the Netherlands, in 1862, and a special commentator for the most influential European newspaper, the European Times, pointed out that the Netherlands has more frequent high-level exchanges with other major European countries except Britain, France and Prussia than with Britain, France and Prussia. This is a reality. He cited the Nordic Alliance and the South American Alliance currently created by the Netherlands, as well as the International Hague Court Organization, which is not an alliance but is no different from an alliance, etc. The latter has almost brought together all the countries in Europe except the 6 major countries, as well as the countries in South America and the United States. As a founder, The role of communication of the Netherlands is destined to have legitimate channels to communicate with various countries. The Netherlands has the advantage of being a large country without causing alarm, and has an image and geographical advantage of owning territories on all 5 continents without threatening other countries. In addition, the Netherlands' industrial capital and other advantages are at the top level in the world. These have enabled the Netherlands to have a lot of exchanges and cooperation with various countries at all levels and in all fields. It can be said that it is handy. After all, compared with the dignity of a great power, these countries more or less need the support of the Netherlands. So objectively speaking, the Netherlands' exchanges with these countries actually have this need. He said that in recent years, Britain, France and Prussia have also been working hard to strengthen interactions with senior officials from other countries in the world, which may form a competitive situation, but there is no need for the Netherlands and these countries to regard every interaction between these countries and other countries in the world as targeting each other. The Netherlands chose this time to invite the prime ministers or presidents of the 4 countries to visit Amsterdam. In the view of Hugh Smith, president of Cambridge University and dean of the School of Political Science, the Netherlands may be a bit speculative. However, he believes that rather than seeing this invitation to the Netherlands as the Netherlands' competition against the military political coercion of Britain, France and Prussia, it more reflects that geographic location and balanced diplomacy are important in Europe. In particular, it is worth noting that Spanish Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez's visit to the Netherlands is the first visit by a Spanish Prime Minister to a European country after the establishment of the new Spanish cabinet government. In the past, every new Spanish Prime Minister would make the first stop of his visit to a foreign country, Paris, France, or Lisbon, Portugal, which is also on the Iberian Peninsula. But this time, Spanish Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez actually made his first foreign visit to Amsterdam, the Netherlands, which shocked the international community. They were all puzzled and shocked that the Kingdom of Spain had abandoned this tradition. It is said that when Paris heard the news, all the diplomats were stunned. Even many of Prime Minister Oliver's political enemies accused him of letting the French Empire be abandoned by traditional allies. He should be responsible for this. Many people directly asked him to step down and apologize. Napoleon III was also accused of undermining the solid foundation of the relationship between Spain and France, and asked Napoleon III to explain this to the people. It can be said that Spain's seemingly changed diplomatic pace this time shocked France, and even London and Berlin were surprised. Even these 2 countries secretly put pressure on Spain and urged the latter to reflect. It is even said that someone in London asked for a meaningful land and sea exercise in the Strait of Gibraltar to prevent anyone from having ambitions against it. This naturally refers to the possibility that Spain may be anti-British. Spain's visit to Amsterdam is a great promotion for the Netherlands' diplomatic strength. Obviously, this shows that the Netherlands has been unprecedentedly consolidated in diplomatic recognition. Because of the shock brought by Spain, it was not surprising when the President of the United States, the traditional ally of the Netherlands, visited. The Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs quoted Foreign Minister Hubert Van as saying that the United States is an important ally of the Netherlands and a major pillar of the Netherlands' diplomacy in the Americas. The Netherlands will create a better future with the United States. The Netherlands supports the United States in dealing with the crisis of invasion by European capital and financial giants. The most famous economist in the Netherlands, Professor Torck of the University of Amsterdam, believes that the Netherlands arranged for the US President and 3 European Prime Ministers to visit the Netherlands at the same time, which shows that the Netherlands wants to put the Rothschild family invasion crisis currently faced by the United States into the framework of the current bad relations with Britain, France and Poland in Europe, and also to express support for the United States to strengthen cooperation with these countries to track the crisis. Francisco Bob, a professor at the University of The Hague in the Netherlands, said that the current turbulent capital situation in the United States is also unfavorable to the Netherlands. I believe that Amsterdam does not want to be involved without permission, so it is unlikely to act as the person behind the United States, but wants multiple countries to take the lead together. To show its determination to become a stable partner, the Netherlands hopes to expand cooperation in various fields with countries around the world other than Britain, the Prussians and France. On September 25, 1868, Cantor, the Atlantic Affairs coordinator of the National Security Council of the Netherlands, who served King William IV of the Netherlands, said that the Netherlands invited the top leaders of the 4 countries to visit for a special visit this time in order to let some high-level officials of countries who are not familiar with the Netherlands know the Dutch Thorbecke cabinet government and his team. Cantor emphasized that the purpose of His Majesty William IV was to let the Dutch Prime Minister Thorbecke tell these high-level figures from various countries that the Netherlands has no intention of challenging their inherent interests, nor will it have fundamental disputes with them in the future, but hopes to promote good international norms with its partners, so as to compete with all countries on an equal footing peacefully and effectively. Cantor expects that through this special visit, the Netherlands will open up diplomatic relations with various countries in the future, expand the Netherlands and other countries, and carry out long-term cooperation in more fields in the international community, and show the Netherlands' determination to become a reliable stable partner of various countries, and compete with the Netherlands' opponents in a peaceful and effective way. Cantor, the Atlantic Affairs coordinator of the Netherlands National Security Council, even said that a Nordic trilateral meeting will be held in the near future. The host country of the trilateral summit is the Netherlands, and the location is Rotterdam. He introduced the Netherlands' expectations for the trilateral summit at the Amsterdam Peace Research Institute Symposium held in Rotterdam. He described this special visit of the 3 countries as an important visit with the aim of making some people in the 4 countries who are not so familiar with the Netherlands think of the Netherlands, and politicians in the 2 countries feel more comfortable discussing strategic issues with the Netherlands. As early as a few years ago, after William IV came to power in January 1862, he published the Netherlands Far East Strategic Report, declaring that he would invest more diplomatic and security resources in the Far East while investing more resources to transform the local economy in order to counter Britain's influence there. Chapter 435 Spain's Breakthrough Attitude. However, many countries with close economic and trade relations with the British Empire were worried that this would intensify the competition between Britain and the Netherlands there, especially Spain and Portugal, who were afraid of affecting their colonies there. Therefore, Spain was still hesitant at the time, fearing that it would really damage the relationship between Britain, France and Prussia and Spain, especially France. However, Cantor emphasized that His Majesty William IV clearly told these prime ministers and presidents that the Netherlands had no intention of turning them or other countries completely to the Netherlands, but hoped to promote good international norms with partners to develop the economies of various countries. This includes cooperation on economic issues that are backward compared to the 3 major industrial countries of Britain, France and Prussia. He specifically mentioned increasing the transparency of investment needs, promoting good governance, and moderately discussing and operating cooperation with Dutch financial institutions. He also said, "We are well aware that any plan designed purely for competition will hardly succeed in the channels of various countries, because each country has its own interests. Cooperation must be based on the interests, needs and expectations of each country. We in the Kingdom of the Netherlands are not naive." Cantor, the challenge we continue to face is not that we are unable to compete, but whether we can cooperate with other countries and implement a persistent strategy. We need to show that the Netherlands is a stable partner, and our strategic interests will drive us to play an increasingly larger role. This requires some persuasion and requires us to prove it with actions. Some people say that before His Majesty William IV, his grandfathers His Majesty William II and His Majesty William II had successively proposed strategic eastward shift and the construction of the Dutch East Indies colony development, but in the end they were all abandoned due to the dissatisfaction of the locals and the pessimism of some countries, as well as the distraction of European and even international affairs. Many of the projects formulated by the Netherlands in the early days were therefore abandoned or reduced in scale. They doubt whether the Netherlands' development plan in the Far East will follow suit. In this regard, Cantor pointed out that the Netherlands is now deeply aware that this cannot happen again. Today, the strategic reality of the Netherlands is different from the past. The international political center is no longer the superpower in the East 50 years ago, nor is it entirely in the English Channel or the Mediterranean before. The international economic center of gravity has a trend of expanding outward to the Atlantic and Western America, and it is even becoming increasingly obvious. With the development of the Netherlands in the Far East, there is also prosperity there, but the scale is not enough to match North America. The Netherlands seeks to expand cooperation with various countries in areas including education, economy and security, which are also issues of concern to the Netherlands and its partner countries. Compared with the 2 kings before His Majesty William IV who attached importance to the Dutch East Indies, Cantor said that the strategic eastward shift of the Netherlands makes people feel that the Netherlands will shift its attention from the Ottoman Empire to the Pacific and Indian Ocean regions in the Far East. In the Amsterdam diplomatic community, we call it the Indo-Pacific strategy. This strategy is the largest project of the Netherlands at present. While focusing on the development of the Indo-Pacific region, the Netherlands will deepen cooperation with European and American partners there in the future. In addition, His Majesty William IV is more deeply aware that the investment of resources is the key to promoting the strategic shift and Indo-Pacific strategy of the Netherlands. In the past, a small group of Dutch officials were responsible for Far Eastern affairs, the largest of which was a governor. Cantor revealed that now the entire Dutch government is involved. For example, in the Dutch rule of Australia a few years ago, all provincial officials were personally planned and invited by His Majesty William IV, and after the Senate passed, all former Dutch prime ministers were used. This is an unprecedented feat. You must know that this is the prime minister who previously managed the entire Netherlands, but now he is reduced to a lower dimension. For example, at every cabinet government meeting now, all Dutch cabinet members must propose the development of Far Eastern affairs in their departments, and then coordinate among departments to promote development. Some people in Europe questioned or even criticized that there was no arrangement for William IV to meet with Andrew Johnson. In this regard, Cantor disclosed that although William IV did not participate in the talks on specific matters, His Majesty William IV had brief private time with each visiting Prime Minister and President to talk about some things they were interested in. In addition to discussing cooperation matters, Cantor said that the Netherlands will also discuss some uncomfortable sensitive issues with the four countries. For example, the current dispute between the Netherlands and Britain, Prussia and France over the warship Dido incident, the Balkan dispute and the Caucasus dispute between Tsarist Russia and the Ottoman Empire, the Gibraltar dispute between Spain and Britain. There is also the attitude of the United States of America towards the secession of the Confederate States of the South and the views of the Netherlands. Of course, there are also consultations on countermeasures for the invasion of the Rothschild family. Cantor said that the Netherlands is also ready to put forward different opinions with various countries. We hope to start a sustainable partnership so that everyone can discuss real issues in a meaningful way. Cantor pointed out that the Netherlands needs to be more familiar with the views of various countries on the Netherlands and the outside world, and also needs to make more people understand the domestic political operations of the Netherlands and the Netherlands' foreign policy. For example, although both factions, parties, in the Dutch parliament support Thorbecke's foreign strategy, they have serious differences on economic and trade issues, and the Dutch political circles need to debate extensively on policies towards Britain, France and Prussia. Cantor said that many countries are not unclear about the Dutch strategy, but their initial contacts with the Netherlands are sometimes too cautious. Your Majesty wants to do his best to eliminate these doubts. We continue to work closely with the Russian Empire in the security field and hope to contact the Spanish Navy as soon as possible, but due to historical factors, there may be some difficulties in the initial contact. Cantor did not further explain the so-called historical factors, but it is believed that it refers to the fact that Spain's main allies are France and Portugal, and these two countries have had serious disputes with the Netherlands in recent years. The dispute between Portugal and the Netherlands over the two sides of the Congo River estuary in Africa caused a war including Angola and Mozambique, which ended with the victory of the Netherlands. Therefore, the relationship between the Netherlands and Portugal is not very harmonious at present. As for France, it invaded the eastern part of Cambodia, the Kingdom of Siam, the Netherlands' ally in the Far East. Therefore, whether for moral or existing strategic reasons, the Netherlands finally stood up to oppose it and took the lead in launching economic sanctions against France, which caused the breakdown of the relationship between the Netherlands and France. Cantor said that Spain played a very important role. Spain's dominance in the Philippines and Cuba made the Netherlands, which also had overseas territories nearby, attach great importance to it. The Netherlands hopes to continue to work closely with Spain in the security field, while expanding trade and economic ties between the two countries. We expect the two countries to continue to work closely together. The relationship between the two countries has rebounded urgently after the Spanish Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez came to power, at least at the strategic level. I very much hope that this momentum can continue. Spain was France's former ally, but now the pro-Dutch stance of the new Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez has impacted the relationship between Spain and France. How the relationship between the two countries will continue to break through is not only of concern to France, but also to European countries. Chapter 436 Dutch Wall Street. 1868, Prince Abdul Vasili, Prime Minister of the Ottoman Empire, expressed in Constantinople that he hoped that the International Hague Court organization would promote reasonable legal diplomacy to resolve the current political deadlock in European countries. He said that the Russian Empire hoped that the International Hague Court organization could participate more deeply in the diplomatic work to promote the resolution of the current political deadlock between the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire. He expressed his willingness to play a positive role in promoting the reconciliation between the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire under the premise of rationality and legality. Obviously, the armistice and peace agreement between the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire hopes to be recognized by more countries at this moment. In response to this, on October 2, 1868, Dutch Prime Minister Thorbecke responded positively in Amsterdam, "We feel that the International Hague Court can play a key role, and we must encourage greater diplomatic efforts. We cannot forget this matter, nor can we ignore the development of the situation, but we cannot simply say that this is a problem of Tsarist Russia and the Ottoman Empire." Thorbecke pointed out that the Netherlands will continue to actively cooperate with partner countries on the issues between Tsarist Russia and the Ottoman Empire. At the same time, the Netherlands hopes and believes that the International Hague Court should take practical measures to have in-depth contacts with the two governments of the parties involved and try to get the two countries out of this tragic and extremely difficult situation. At the same time, the Foreign Minister and Prime Minister of the Tsarist Russian Empire Gorchakov also stated that the Tsarist Russian Empire was willing to accept the advice of the Ottoman Empire and agree that the Hague International Organization created by the Netherlands would coordinate the armistice agreement between the two countries. In response, Berlin responded, "Prussia and its partners are discussing closely the need to increase their involvement in the Pacific and Indian Oceans, where Prussia and Britain and France have not been a big deal recently." Bismarck said that he did not directly criticize the Netherlands' unprecedented development in the Pacific and Indian Oceans in the Far East, but said that Prussia is discussing closely with its partners, hoping to increase Prussia's and its partners' involvement there. The Netherlands' active expansion in the Far East has attracted the attention of some European countries, especially Britain, France and Prussia, which are adjacent to the Netherlands' Far East territory. Although the details of the Netherlands' military and industrial development there have not been disclosed, there are reports that it has become the de facto hegemon of the Indo-Pacific, which has made countries with important interests there uneasy. The Prussian Prime Minister and Foreign Minister said that if the Netherlands is allowed to continue to develop and expand in this way, perhaps the entire Pacific and Indian Oceans will become the territory of the Netherlands. "We will support all countries in finding their own strategic interests there, and we are not completely opposed to the development of the Netherlands there, but some plans need to be more transparent. If the military plan may change the strategic situation in the Pacific and Indian Oceans, we will pay attention and take some remarkable measures to respond effectively." He did not specify what the specific measures were. This made many people very curious. Amsterdam. William once again lamented that the Netherlands was in a good era. The statements made by Bismarck, Gorchakov and Prince Abdul Wasi at this time show the necessity of the Netherlands to strengthen its own resistance and national defense. At the same time, the strong support of the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire had a very strong impact in Europe, and both Britain and France and Prussia were hit hard. Originally, the Netherlands faced repeated provocations from the three major powers of Britain, France and Prussia in the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. It seems that the situation has become precarious, which makes many people in the Netherlands very worried. Even many people can't sleep at night, for fear that when they wake up, they are afraid that the three countries have already launched more provocative actions against the Netherlands in the Far East, or even give the Netherlands a blow in Europe. Dutch Foreign Minister Hespet van said in high spirits, "Your Majesty, although these three countries seem to be coordinated, as Your Majesty expected, their action has caused other major powers to start to act. They have made other major powers see the threat, and as the initiator of this, our Kingdom of the Netherlands, we are now using these countries' concerns and choices about the three countries as a balance to check and balance them." The Dutch Indian Ocean and Pacific Coordinator actually was delighted and thought to himself, "Sure enough, Hespet van is still suitable for diplomacy," and hit the point right away. "Your Excellency Hespet is right, but as a country with considerable influence all over the world, we should not only focus on the Indo-Pacific region, but also pay attention to the other side of the Atlantic." Cantor, the Atlantic coordinator of the Dutch Security Committee, followed up. In the past few years, the political arena of many countries in the Americas and Europe has been turbulent, and the regimes of several countries have changed or been turbulent, which may have a profound impact on the political, economic and security situation in Europe and the United States. The Netherlands has major interests in Europe and the Americas and needs to pay close attention. Seeing that everyone was successfully attracted, Cantor said seriously, "The Rothschild family is the focus of our attention this time. As for the provocations of the other three countries of Britain, France and Prussia, they may just be playing tricks." William IV praised, "Well said, this may be the purpose of the Rothschild family, and it is also an explanation given by the three governments to the Rothschild family." In London, Lionel Rothschild secretly said, "If we can fool the Netherlands, there will be no surprises in the next alternative war in the United States." Without the help of the Dutch government, the financial capital of the United States is just a group of weak chickens. In recent years, the United States has developed rapidly and its capital has grown. In the 10 years from 1857 to 1867, the economy has grown by more than 1 times. If the Dutch are excluded, the country may have grown by less than 70%. Anyone with a little economic common sense knows that this has shown that the country's economic power has fallen into the hands of the Dutch. You should know that the Dutch only account for less than 5% of the country's total population. But they took away 30% of the growth share, which is terrifying. Of course, if the United States can unite against the Rothschild family, as they did in the War of Independence more than 100 years ago, then even without the Dutch, the Rothschild family will still be terrified. Thinking of this, Lionel Rothschild couldn't help laughing. The two small families, Morgan and Rockefeller, who are supported by the Rothschild family, have now established themselves in the United States. Next, I will take action on the currency and national debt of the United States. It's time for them to contribute. Humph. The Dutch New York, what a good tone. It is said that these Dutch have also launched a plan to build a financial street there, named Wall Street. It seems that the Dutch have great ambitions. Lionel Rothschild suddenly laughed and said to himself, perhaps, after the Rothschilds successfully enter this time, they can use the ideas of the Dutch? Wall Street is really a good idea. Chapter 437, Shipping Empire Builder Enters the Railway Industry. There is no doubt that the Industrial Revolution of the United States has started in an all-round way. Although many places are still dominated by traditional handicrafts, more places, especially the eastern coastal areas, have added a lot of mechanical tools. The capitalists in New England, especially New York, and Chicago have both cooperation and competition. Many capitalists have industries in both places, and the relationship between the two sides is not so easy to distinguish. It is precisely because of this that external forces can infiltrate more easily. It is also because of this that the United States federal government knows that all countries have agents in their country. This is a secret that is not a secret, but the government can do nothing about it, because in each cabinet government, there are many representatives of the interests of major capital chaebwalls. Therefore, it is difficult for the United States government to remove it, because accepting international immigrants is their founding national policy. Similarly, accepting their capital is also a policy that is difficult for the United States to shake, because this policy has advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantage is that there is a possibility of infiltration, and the bonus is that the United States can obtain advanced European technology and huge capital to build itself. In the face of the huge interests of the latter, the former ones don't matter. Anyway, this is a conspiracy of all parties. Even President Lincoln, who is very tough against Britain and the Rothschild family, has to admit that the United States needs capital from various countries to be transferred to the United States to promote development. Therefore, this is also why he can only prevent Rothschild in Britain from infiltrating, and he also needs to face the growing power of the Dutch in the country to suppress it. At the same time, he deliberately guides the Dutch and Prussians to hurt each other, and finally wants to reap the benefits of the fishermen. It's a pity that the idea is good, but in the end he went to see God early. So far, many people point the finger at the murderer as the Prussians, but many people suspect that there are Dutch figures in it. On October 5, 1868, the situation in Europe changed suddenly, which was overwhelming. First, the Hague International Court of Justice, led by the Netherlands, officially announced that the Ottoman Empire became a new member of the organization, and the Russian Empire became a partner of the organization. The proximity of the two countries has once again caused huge public opinion in the world for the Hague International Court of Justice. Many people said that the organization's team has become so large that it occupies more than 2/3 of the world's countries, which makes the world feel for the first time how shocked it is to face a national organization. In response, Britain, France and Prussia said that they would not seek to join the organization in the near future. Every day that the Siamese War launched by France lasts, it will bring immeasurable losses to the two countries involved in the war, including the capitalists of the French Empire. The national mobilization of the French Empire also hindered these French businessmen from making money. However, other countries that did not directly participate in the war made a lot of money. Among them, Jakarta is even more lively. As the largest city in Southeast Asia, Jakarta is also the largest trade turnover port and light industrial center in the region. The continuous orders for daily necessities in the Kingdom of Siam are said to have added more than 100,000 jobs. This has greatly promoted the local economic development. The weapons of the Paradise Peninsula in New Guinea are also continuously sent to Bangkok. The more fierce the attack launched by France in eastern Cambodia, the more intense the gunfight between the Kingdom of Siam and France, and the Dutch East India Company's weapon sales will hit new highs, and the military industry will flourish. If there is a war in the neighboring countries, if the goods of the industrial poor countries can be sent there for sale, the economic growth rate can be increased in a short time. The Zhoushan War in the previous life revived the Japanese economy. The Vietnam War made Singapore the most important turnover port for Western warships, and since then it has become the fastest-growing developed city-state in Southeast Asia. The war between the Kingdom of Siam and the French Empire has caused the economy of the Dutch East Indies to increase its growth rate sharply, making the Dutch economic territory in the Far East more solid. The New York Stock Exchange is located on William Street, between Beaver Street and the Trading Hall. This place reminds people of many major speculative activities. What, Vanderbilt, you actually bought shares in the Harlem Railway? Andrew Johnson, President of the United States of America, is currently in New York. Vanderbilt, the American shipping magnate, actually chose to go ashore to build a railway? Although Andrew is the president of the country, he was still shocked by the news. Vanderbilt's family began as immigrants in the 17th century. They became rich in 1810 when Vanderbilt was 16 years old. At that time, this guy borrowed $100 from his mother to start a ferry business in New York Bay. Within a few years, his business soared, the routes continued to increase, and the number of ships even expanded rapidly to more than 100. In 1861, when the Civil War began, his shipping empire was valued at $20 million after evaluation. This is a mythical figure in the United States. Although his wealth is not as much as the Randi family, and is even about the same as the newly emerging Morgan family and Rockefeller Consortium, his history has become the object of admiration for everyone, because he really started from scratch and created a personal legend. The reason why President Andrew exclaimed was because of the Harlem Railroad. Because this railway is very ordinary. Vanderbilt was very satisfied with this. Since the 1850s, when the railway, a new means of transportation, began to spread in the United States, Vanderbilt quickly realized that a new basis for making money had arrived. After years of research, he sensitively felt that the era of steamships dominating transportation had gradually declined, and inland transportation was bound to be replaced by railways. One very obvious point is that the Dutch Australia, which is now in the Far East, is carrying out a large-scale construction trend like tea. It is said that more than 100,000 workers are used to build crisscrossing railways on the entire continent. It should be known that Australia is surrounded by the sea and shipping is very convenient. However, it is under such favorable conditions that the smart Dutch chose to build expensive railways on land. It can be seen that it must be profitable. He investigated some details of railway transportation, such as the cost, speed, profit, engine power, etc. of trains to prove the feasibility of getting involved in railways. Finally, at the age of over 70, he decided to give up the shipping business he loved all his life and invest all his funds in railways. During this meeting with President Andrew, who happened to be visiting New York, he sought support for this. He told President Andrew that he was going to use Wall Street as an entry point to start buying railroad company stocks, gain control and management rights, and start operating the railroad. Unexpectedly, Andrew's reaction was so big. Obviously, his career change was really too unexpected. Chapter 438, Judging the Situation and Gaining Political Advantage. and identifying business opportunities with a keen eye. 1868, the European Times suddenly reported a shocking news to the world. The most intense battle for railway equity broke out in the United States of America. The target of the battle was the control of the Erie Railway. The attacker was Cornelius Vanderbilt, who was known as the Captain of the United States of America, and the attacker was Daniel Drew, nicknamed Cattle Dealer. Both of them were capital tycoons in Northern Europe. Once the European Times reported it, it caused a huge shock throughout Europe. Because ordinary people have heard of their legends, and the upper class has many inside stories that ordinary people don't know, they associate many things. The Harlem Railway was completed in 1852. Because its routes mostly pass through poor villages and are poorly managed, the Harlem Railway has low profits. In the railway industry at that time, the Harlem Railway was recognized as the least promising railway in North America. Your Majesty, I don't understand why you let Vanderbilt compete for this railway. Amsterdam, the Netherlands. William IV sat alone in the backyard of the royal family. Within a radius of 50 meters, only the director of the Dutch International Intelligence Agency, Mike Shawn, was here. Many of William IV's international intelligence was handled by Mike Shawn, so he was the one who was most familiar with the Dutch actions in this contest between North America and the Rothschild family. He was also William IV's assistant in this operation. William IV looked at his right-hand man who had been with him for many years. Like Bill and Charlie, they were his confidants who had been cultivated since the time of the Crown Prince, and he trusted them. In response to his question, William IV patiently said, "Playing politics requires the ability to judge the situation, and doing business requires a unique eye to discover business opportunities unknown to outsiders. First, the Harlem Railroad is one of the two railways that go directly to Manhattan. The other is the Hudson Railroad. Trains coming from the east of New York City must pay the Harlem Railroad Company to obtain the right-of-way. To the west of New York, since there is no bridge over the Hudson River, trains coming from the west are cut off by the Hudson River. Therefore, the Harlem Railroad has a unique geographical location in New York." Mike Shawn suddenly came to his senses when he heard this. In this case, this railroad has become a rare commodity. William IV did not comment, and continued, "Secondly, when the New York state government granted the Harlem Railway the right to operate, it also granted the city council, under appropriate circumstances, the right to grant the Harlem Company the right to operate the Broadway bus line across the city." Mike Shawn's whole body trembled, and a scorching light flashed in his eyes. In this way, the entire New York traffic is almost under the influence of the Harlem Parent Company. William IV nodded and said, "Based on the above two considerations, and carefully observing the operating conditions of the Harlem Company, further speaking, the chaotic management and high costs of the Harlem Railway are the fundamental reasons for its poor profitability. Then why did you choose Vanderbilt? There are geniuses in every industry, and cross-industry has never been a forbidden zone. With many years of experience and confidence in shipping companies, I believe Vanderbilt can operate this railway and make a profit with far higher efficiency than others." William IV said confidently, "I don't think anyone is more suitable than him for the Morgan family." Junior Morgan's face was extremely solemn. He was the current person in charge of the Morgan family. He was the founder of the Morgan Company, and he could also be said to be the founder of the Morgan Family Consortium. At the age of 65, he was still in high spirits. It's really a coincidence that old guy Vanderbilt actually intervened and chose to join the game at this time. He sneered. It goes without saying that he never believed that there were so many coincidences in the world. There must be some people and things that were not coincidental and deliberately interfered. Father, it is obvious that someone deliberately issued a challenge to us. Should we bite it and give them a blow? The speaker was Pierpont Morgan, the son of Junior Morgan and his heir. Pierpont was Junior's favorite, and he was very satisfied with his son's study. After the child completed his studies in 1853, he went to study in London, England in July. In November of the same year, he left London for Europe and enrolled in Belerius School for further studies. In 1856, Pierpont went to Berlin to study German at the University of Göttingen. In 1857, he went to New Orleans and earned his first pot of gold by selling coffee at the age of 20. What satisfied Junior the most was that his proud son, at the age of 24, actually founded the Morgan Company in New York. It was the establishment of this company, in conjunction with the capital operation of the family's Morgan Bank, that enabled the Morgan family's business to expand rapidly. In just a few years, it became one of the largest financial groups in the United States of America. Junior's Morgan knew that there was someone to take over. That was why the head of the Morgan family had always treated his son Peter with an equal attitude since 1861. Just like now, when Peter expressed his doubts, Junior's fell into deep thought. Now is an extraordinary period. If we invest too much, Junior's Morgan said cautiously, be careful that we will become the vanguard of others, and in the end, while defending others from disaster, we will be stabbed in the back. But father, if we don't do this, the Rothschild family's balance may sink to the Rockefeller family, which will be a loss for us. Peter, look, this is the dilemma we are facing now. These international capitals are strategizing, and we, small capitals that are alone, have to follow their lead everywhere. It's too difficult. Father, it is said that there are many voices in Europe that are dissatisfied with the Rothschild family. There are even rumors that the royal families and governments of European countries are wary of the Rothschild family. I think this is news that is neither good nor bad for us. What do you mean? The Morgan family cannot work for others all their lives, nor will it always be a subordinate enterprise of others. We naturally need to be prepared to be independent. I think waiting for the anti-Rothschild outbreak in Europe will be something worth looking forward to. Peter Morgan said meaningfully, then the necklace on our Morgan neck will be cut off. Junior's Morgan smiled and said, it's a good idea, but it seems to be a very distant thing at present. Peter Morgan shook his head. Father, I think Rockefeller should be similar to us. Not really, Junior said. Is it true? Just look at Vanderbilt's acquisition of the Harlem Railroad this time. Junior's Morgan's eyes flashed. You mean, Roche will stop it, and we are his tools. Working without putting in any effort, I think Rockefeller should have the same idea. Although Junior's Morgan didn't believe it, he had to say that his son Peter's statement was true. Then we'll wait and see. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 439, Stocks are competing, short sell or buy? Playing with stocks, do these Dutch really think that I dare not fight with you in New York? Humph, although the earliest developers of New York were Dutch, don't forget that the winner is the king, and it's too early to say anything. In London, England, Lionel Rothschild gave an order, and many people in the United States began to pay attention to the stocks of the Harlem Parent Company. Starting on October 3, 1868, Vanderbilt began to buy the stocks of the Harlem Parent Company on Wall Street. Vanderbilt gradually took control of the operating rights of the Harlem Railway by continuously purchasing the stocks of the Harlem Parent Company. Unexpectedly, no one stopped the acquisition of the largest Dutch entrepreneur. This is a bit abnormal. Obviously, the Rothschild family has been making a lot of trouble recently, but now it has stopped? It shouldn't be. So after seeing Vanderbilt obtain the operating rights, many people actually began to obtain the operating rights of the bus lines on Broadway Street in New York. William IV saw this and suddenly felt something in his heart, as if he had discovered something. So he called McShane over and gave him some instructions, then murmured, this time, the tail is about to show up. On October 10, 1868, some anti-Dutch media began to report that Vanderbilt bribed New York City Council members in order to acquire New York bus lines. Many media even believed that Vanderbilt bribed city council members in addition to bribing them. But it was quickly extinguished. In the Morgan family, Junior's Morgan sighed, look, this is a veteran. I have to say that the qualifications and experience of old Vanderbilt are enough to surpass more than 9,999 out of 10,000 people in New York City, at least in terms of business. Peter Morgan held the secret information in his hand. This was sent by a city council member they supported in the New York City Council, which made him have to obey. He sighed, the parent company of Haller will hand over 10% of the annual income of the operator, the Italo line, to the New York City government. This move is really impeccable. As a New Yorker, no one would object to such a configuration. I have to say that Vanderbilt really has insight into human nature. However, Father, those guys in the Rothschild family are not easy to deal with. I think there will be more exciting things to come. Yes, you have to learn more from the back and understand the style of these big business families. It will be very good for you. Yes, Father. On October 10, 1868, the New York City Council approved the Broadway bus line plan granted to Haller's parent company. Before that, the value of Haller Railway stock was only $50 per share, but by October 25, 1868, the price had soared to $116, which was good news for short sellers. They sold frantically, waiting for the sharp drop in Haller's stock. Among these short sellers was Daniel Drew, a famous cattle dealer on Wall Street, who was a director of Haller's parent company. However, news unfavorable to Vanderbilt came. On the afternoon of November 5, the New York City Council went back on its word and suddenly canceled the Broadway bus line operation rights that were finalized to Haller's parent company a month ago, which directly led to the stock price of Haller's parent company plummeting to $70. Wall Street short sellers were ecstatic and hoped that Haller's stock would fall further the next day. At this time, many people realized that something was wrong. President Andrew even met with officials from the New York City Hall and expressed his dissatisfaction with this. Many capitalists in New York City have used their own channels to understand why the City Council went back on its word. Andrew even said at a dinner at the White House that he felt the City Council should not do anything that would damage its reputation. Going back on one's word should not happen in the great American City Council. He was even more prepared to call on all the city councils in the United States to follow their own behavioral norms and set a positive example, rather than the opposite. Obviously, the Dutch-American president was on the verge of anger. But this time, there were different voices expressing dissatisfaction. On November 7, 1868, a member of the Philadelphia Congress did not accept the president's statement. He said, "Every level of parliament has its own position. We don't want administrative officials to interfere in the operation of the parliament. This is an act of overstepping authority. The president should not make decisions in parliament. This is the most important thing the president should abide by." Obviously, this was a provocation to President Andrew's authority, but this guy said it in a very clear and even logical way based on the American Constitution. It was difficult for President Andrew to suppress it too much because it would cause a group effect. Therefore, in the end, Andrew could only give up the official pressure. Many people saw this and even thought that Vanderbilt had no choice but to face the decline of the stock of Haller's parent company. However, unexpectedly, the stock of Haller's parent company rose instead of falling the next day, and quickly rebounded to $97, and reached $106 on the third day. This attracted the attention of the whole of North America and even Europe. Many people in the Morgan family and the Rockefeller family were stunned. After that, they quickly understood the situation. After learning the real reason, they were stunned. How could they do this? Randy family. Blythe is now the Secretary of State of the United States, and he is very busy, but the recent incident of the most famous stock of the Haller parent company in the United States has made him worry about it. Vanderbilt actually chose to do the reverse operation. When others were short selling, he paid for these people's short selling out of his own pocket. This is really too bold. It turned out that when the largest shareholder and stockholder of the Haller parent company was Vanderbilt and his friends, as long as the short sellers were willing to continue to sell the Haller shares in their hands, they would have enough rent in the bank to pay for these shares. According to the rules of futures short selling, when the short selling contract expires, the short seller can only buy the Haller parent company's ticket for delivery. Since the Haller parent company stocks are now in the hands of Captain Vanderbilt and others, the speculators who short sell can only buy stocks from Vanderbilt. There is no other way. Naturally, the price of Haller stock is firmly controlled by Captain Vanderbilt. Among these short-selling speculators, there were some city council members who saw that the situation was not right. In order to please Vanderbilt, they reapproved the operating rights of the Broadway bus line in the city to the parent company of Haller. And Vanderbilt also did them a favor, letting the city council members go and agreeing to lower the stock price to $84. However, Vanderbilt showed no mercy to those short-selling speculators on Wall Street, and let the stock price of the parent company of Haller soar all the way to $180 before the short-selling speculators were able to close their positions. At this point, Vanderbilt bought the controlling stake of the Harlem Railroad Company, making him famous on Wall Street. Chapter 440, The Mission Will Never End Until the Jewish State is Restored. France, Paris. James Rothschild frowned as he listened carefully to his son Edmund Rothschild's account of the Harlem Railway Company War from North America. "Father, it seems that the Dutch have a huge influence in the United States of America. In the past, The Randy family surpassed other families in the United States to become the most powerful consortium family, and in the back, the Vanderbilt family occupied the shipping giant in the United States of America and achieved the title of captain. Now that President Andrew Johnson is in power, the Dutch capitalists have taken the opportunity to cross borders and enter land transportation such as railways and buses. James Rothschild nodded and said, "How are our Jewish compatriots doing in the United States?" Edmund Rothschild said, "Everything is going well at the moment. However, the existence of large ethnic groups in Europe such as the Dutch and Prussians makes it difficult for the Jews to display their talents. And you know, just like in Europe, the Jews are still not very welcome, even though our business capabilities have been noticed and recognized by everyone." James looked up at his son Edmund, thoughtfully, and sighed after a moment. "Helping the Jewish people develop is the destiny your grandfather has always talked about. As his descendants, we must maintain this sense of mission. So father also supports cousin Lionel's approach in North America, trying to build a place for Jews to settle down there? To this end, he did not hesitate to defeat the Dutch who have the most power there." Edmund asked doubtfully. "James has been extremely arrogant all his life. This can be seen from the fact that he won the right to issue French currency and financial bonds in just a few years after arriving in Paris from Frankfurt. Many people compare him with his third brother Nathan Rothschild, who is a big shot in London, England, and completed the great feat of conquering the first castle of the Rothschild family outside of Frankfurt, which made the Rothschild family famous. That's why James has regarded Nathan as an opponent and role model for decades. With the death of his third brother Nathan, he has represented the next generation of competition with his sons Edmund and Lionel, but no one will try the Rothschild family's ancestral precept of not fighting internally, and no one will do anything to harm the public interest for personal gain. James naturally understands that this is the most important factor for a family to flourish. The Jewish people are our roots. Don't forget, there is a saying in the Far East that those who are not of our race must have different hearts. Edmund, our Zionist state is in Jerusalem in the Middle East. That is our homeland. Before your grandfather passed away, he once told us to remember that the Rothschild family's genetic mission must be to help the Zionist state. For this reason, we can do something shocking to the world. If one generation fails, the next generation will do it. If one day fails, the world will work hard for it." Edmund Rothschild was shocked and looked at his father James. He saw that his father, who had always been proud, had a solemn look on his face. Obviously, this mission was really engraved in his father's mind. Presumably, Lionel should think so too. What is father going to do? What else can we do? Since your cousin Lionel has provoked the Rothschild family to fight with others in North America, the entire Rothschild family will naturally not let outsiders see that we are a mess. It is about time for the French government to intervene in North American affairs. The French are not doing well in North America. Will this not have much effect? Edmund asked doubtfully. If the effect is not ideal, don't we still have the French government? James smiled and said, "We have supported Napoleon III for so long. It is time to do something to repay us." Edmund's body shook slightly and looked at his father James in surprise. Did father say before that the favors owed to us by the Napoleon III regime need to be used at a critical moment? What is a critical moment? James taught, the so-called favors are only owed when they are needed, and they are worth having when they have investment value. But if the favors are almost worthless and useless, it would be a failed investment if we keep them. Edmund, everything cannot remain unchanged. The difference between black and white is actually just a ray of light. Edmund's face showed a sense of learning. At this point, the Rothschild father and son in Paris decided to support Lionel in North America and show solidarity in North America. Prussia, Berlin. Prime Minister, the growth of the Dutch is unstoppable. The political and business combination that has become a trend is difficult to defeat in the United States. Prussia should not participate in the suppression of the Dutch at present. In front of Crown Prince Frederick sat King William I of Prussia and Prime Minister Bismarck. The three of them are currently worried about the North American financial war. William I, on the other hand, had a different view. William IV is a very secretive person. I am worried that the Rothschild family may fall into William IV's trap if they are not careful. William I has been very wary of William IV in recent years, so in this possible financial war in North America, he has put most of his energy on William IV of the Netherlands. Over the years, I have been observing this guy William IV, and I found that he has become more and more low-key in recent years. One possibility is that he is a talentless king who only cares about the status quo, and the other possibility is that he is like a snake, choosing his prey. In my opinion, William IV is the latter. I am worried that when everyone has a preconceived notion that the Rothschild family dominates the financial power in Europe and that the Netherlands will suffer a big loss in North America, be careful that William IV will give everyone a surprise. Crown Prince Frederick was stunned, and then his face was full of disbelief. Father, this should be impossible. Don't forget that the current financial power of this European power is almost controlled by the Rothschild family. How can the Netherlands compete with them? I am worried that the Dutch guilder will be overwhelmed by the Rothschild family if it is not careful. Lose purchasing power. Bismarck's eyes suddenly lit up, as if he thought of something. Crown Prince Frederick continued, can the Netherlands be stronger than the British Empire? For many years, Queen Victoria could only please the Rothschilds to ensure the stability of Britain's expansion. If not, the military expenditures and warship losses of launching a war might be unsustainable. These are terrible astronomical data. No, I don't agree with what the Crown Prince said, Bismarck said at this time. Don't forget, Crown Prince, the current Dutch guilder of the Netherlands is independent and even has its own system. I just realized that the Netherlands chose to peg to the pound while actually pegging to the US dollar. But the gold content is volatile, so what? Crown Prince Frederick asked, puzzled. Chapter 441 Price List for Bribing Officials. Bismarck asked Crown Prince Frederick in return, if the Dutch guilder is independent, the Dutch financial system will not be completely linked to the pound, and the pound is linked to gold. What freedom will the Dutch guilder gain from this? Can the Dutch guilder's exchange rate be freely chosen between gold and pound? Crown Prince Frederick asked. Yes, if at this time, the Netherlands suddenly announced that it would no longer be linked to the pound and chose to implement a gold standard with the British pound, the Dutch guilder would directly increase the gold content with the gold, or decrease the gold content, etc., which would be enough to pry the status of the pound. Who would be most anxious at this time? The British government, Crown Prince Frederick answered without thinking. After all, the pound is the currency of the United Kingdom. If they are not anxious, who will be anxious? Bismarck shook his head. It should be the Rothschild family. William I's eyes showed a look of sudden realization, but he did not say it out loud. Crown Prince Frederick asked in confusion, why? Bismarck said, because they are the issuers of currency, and they also control the national debt. The currencies of major European countries are all controlled by their family. If the rise and fall of the value of the Dutch guilder is no longer determined by them, then other European currencies will enter a period of turbulence. Don't forget that the Netherlands is currently an industrial power. Although the market size is not large in Europe, its industrial products are in the forefront. Moreover, many countries in Northern and Southern Europe are distribution centers for their products, and America is currently the largest product sales market for the Netherlands. Over time, the Dutch guilder has now become the savings currency owned by many countries in Southern Europe, Northern Europe and the entire Americas, and its credit is already very strong. This is what the Rothschild family has been doing in Europe, and now the Netherlands is trying to grab its share in the world. Do you think the Rothschild family can be free of worries? Currency. As Bismarck pushed away the dark cloud above his head, Crown Prince Frederick finally saw the possible purpose of the Dutch royal family. That's right, William I interrupted at this time. The reason why Britain can develop into the most powerful industrial country in the world is actually inseparable from its status as a capital and financial center, which was snatched from the Netherlands. Back then, the Netherlands' tulip financial hegemony shocked Europe. Britain and the Netherlands formed the United Kingdom, and finally absorbed the nutrients of Dutch financial capital, and eventually the guest bullied the host and counterattacked the Netherlands. For many years, the Netherlands has been unwilling to let Britain snatch their status as the largest capital and financial country in Europe, so it is understandable that they took it back this time to realize the Netherlands' dream for hundreds of years. Amsterdam, Netherlands. All key positions in the family business can only be held by family members. Family members marry cousins to preserve family wealth. At the request of Mayor Rothschild Sr., His Majesty ensures that this is implemented, and someone in this generation has already implemented it. The family's property list must not be made public to show wealth. The estate can only be inherited among family members, and no other legal action can be taken regarding the estate. The eldest son of the eldest son will become the son of the family, and this cannot be overturned unless the majority of family members reach an agreement. The Rothschild family is Jewish and this cannot be changed, so the Rothschild family must safeguard the interests of the Jews. Listening to Mackay Sean talking about the family rule set by Mayer Sr., the founder of the Rothschild family, William IV's face was very calm. This surprised Mackay Sean, because the family rules set by Mayer Sr. were too harsh, so harsh that his children and grandchildren did not have many choices for marriage freedom. Although everyone knows that wealth should not be exposed, the family's practices over the years have not deviated from this family rule. This makes Mackay Sean unbelievable. A big family relies on this family rule to not expose wealth, but it still becomes the most powerful family in the world's finance. How incredible! But the majesty in front of him was indifferent. In fact, he didn't know that William IV in front of him had seen these things in later generations, and even knew more details than he did. Vanderbilt has entered the state, and the Rothschild family's first use of parliament to stop the purpose has been broken by me. William IV said to Mackay Sean, has the Rothschild family of the United States used the power of the Morgan family and the Rockefeller family at present? Mackay Sean shook his head. No, at present, these two families have not made any rash moves, but William IV's face sank. But what? These two families are not involved, but their Mellon family consortium seems to be interested in becoming the vanguard of the Rothschild family Mellon consortium? William IV was shocked. The Mellon consortium was also very famous in the past. This family was not as famous as the Morgan and Rock families, nor was it as prosperous as some other consortiums, but the low profile of this family could not cover up their brilliance. In later generations, this family controlled the world's most powerful weapons manufacturers, Rockefeller Martin and Westinghouse, with the Rockefeller family. They manufactured airplanes, missiles, and rockets, and were the largest weapons contractors for the Pentagon and NASA. Thinking of this, William IV asked, does the Mellon consortium have a close relationship with the Rockefeller consortium, or is it better with the Morgan consortium? Mikazian didn't understand the meaning of William IV's question, but he still answered honestly, it's better with the Morgan consortium. William IV's breathing became rapid, which was noticed by Mikazian. Although it was very light. Send someone to keep an eye on the Mellon consortium in the Rockefeller direction. I think there may be something going on. And William IV said, what kind of help did this family give to the Rothschilds? Bribing Dutch officials to help the Rothschild family's actions. Like us? How do we use our funds to bribe anti-Dutch and pro-Dutch officials and congressmen? William IV narrowed his eyes and asked, also, how does your Dutch International Intelligence Agency bribe? There's a price list. What? The price list is out? I'm interested. Yes, $50,000 for the governor, $10,000 for the deputy governor, and a total of 5 people. What a high amount. $10,000 for the finance minister and $5,000 for the governor's private secretary. 51 senators will get about $5,000 each, 8 congressmen will get $1,000 each, 13 state government members will get a total of $175,000, the second secretary of the House of Representatives will get $10,000, 4 pro-Dutch newspaper publishers will get $5,000, and 7 anti-Dutch newspaper publishers will get $10,000 each. What a good price list. William IV was very satisfied, even though he spent more than $1 million, equivalent to 5 million Dutch guilders or 200,000 pounds. William IV never believed that the so-called Dutch could dominate the United States, because the Dutch base was there. Can 1.1 million Dutch rule that country? Therefore, William IV deployed President Andrew and the Dutch to charge forward. At the same time, he also used intelligence organizations to secretly cultivate a lot of intelligence personnel and unusual relationships. One positive and one strange, the unity of the positive and the strange is the fundamental. Chapter 442, Anti-Dutch Peace Research Institute at Cambridge University. November 10, 1868. Dutch Foreign Minister Chancellor Van Hall holds a regular press conference. At the meeting, a reporter asked, the Cambridge University Peace Research Institute established the Dutch Centre on November 13, 1868, and former British Prime Minister Edward Smith Stanley served as the chairman of the advisory committee of the Centre. What comments does the foreign minister have on this? Haspert Van said that the Cambridge University Peace Research Institute is a think tank of the Conservative Tory party of the British Empire. Like the current British Prime Minister Disraeli, they are all British Tories. The former Prime Minister Edward Smith Stanley is well known for being the most enthusiastic anti-Dutch. This year, He has provided a platform for many cabinet officials and politicians such as MPs of the British Empire to make anti-Dutch remarks. It is said that this institution has long been funded by the British Rothschild family, and recently it has repeatedly spread negative remarks about the Netherlands and the Rothschild family's struggle in the Americas. Haspert van pointed out that academic institutions should build bridges for exchanges and mutual learning among countries, rather than digging trenches with deep trenches and high walls. Academic institutions should have become a bridge for understanding and cooperation between the Netherlands and the United Kingdom, rather than a distribution center for spreading lies about the Netherlands. Haspert van said that he believed that everyone should be highly vigilant about the real purpose of the establishment of the so-called Dutch Center and its possible hostile behavior towards the Netherlands, and would not take advantage of the situation for individual anti-Dutch forces. Finally, Haspert van said, "I hope that individual retirees will not lose their reputation in their old age." Obviously, the head of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs was hinting that the current practices of former British Prime Minister Edward Smith Stanley and other former British high-level officials were futile. In fact, he was warning Britain that supporting the Rothschild family now would be in vain. In response, news came from number 10 Downing Street in the UK that Disraeli was very dissatisfied with this and asked British Foreign Secretary Russell to protest again to the Dutch ambassador to the UK Mike Davis. At the same time, under Disraeli's promotion, the Tories and the Rothschild family paid a heavy price, and the Whig-controlled British House of Commons passed the Dutch Act to support Britain's development in the Near East Indian subcontinent, where Britain would develop its industrial economy. The House of Commons even legislated to require the Disraeli government to find the best location in the Far East as soon as possible to build Britain's industrial headquarters in the Indian Ocean. It is said that number 10 Downing Street wanted to be established in Colombo, but Buckingham Palace put the governor's house and the industrial headquarters together in Mumbai. Many people speculated that Disraeli would need to compromise in the end. After all, the Prime Minister only served for 4 years, but the British King was the most powerful. Disraeli was a wise man and he would know what to do. Many people did not understand the meaning, but this did not prevent the top leaders of various countries from understanding that this was a power struggle between the government and the royal family. In the United Kingdom, since the 17th century, after the king's power was forced to decentralize, it was gradually seized by number 10 Downing Street. Queen Victoria remained the supreme commander of the army and the highest leader of the United Kingdom, but the executive unit was still the British cabinet government. Therefore, the royal family headed by Queen Victoria had to make full compromises with the Whigs and the Tories, regardless of whether they had a good or bad relationship with them. Whoever was strong could take power, and who needed to step back. At present, it seems that Queen Victoria seems to have the upper hand. Who said that the Tories were weak when they first came to power? After all, during the Palmerston period, the Whigs made Buckingham Palace and Queen Victoria almost a symbol of rubber stamps that only signed and stamped. On November 15, 1868, Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom inspected the Dutch Centre newly established by Cambridge University. She met with Stanley and expressed the royal family's support for his work. At the same time, she called on the Dutch government to be more open-minded and support British concerns. She joked that the establishment of such a research institute related to the Netherlands by the University of Cambridge in the UK actually represents that the Netherlands has become the focus of British attention. Being a country that the British care about means that the Netherlands has become a great power. It should be noted that before the Netherlands, only France, Prussia, Austria-Hungary, Tsarist Russia, the Ottoman Empire and other countries had established separate country-centered research institutions in the UK. The Queen said with a smile that the Netherlands should be happy, and should be even more happy about the recognition of the Netherlands' status as an international power from the UK. The political struggle in Europe never stops. The means used by various countries for their own political and economic interests are exhausted, making it difficult for countries to defend themselves. Ordinary people are always stunned by new news. While Latin American countries are watching the developments in Europe, they are also looking north, which attracts their attention more than Europe. So, this is the reason why the Rothschild family launched an attack on the Dutch in the United States? Andrew seemed to confirm very seriously and asked, "Yes, Mr. President, it is inevitable that we Dutch will become the target of attack by the Rothschild family. Amsterdam means that our two countries can work together to fight against the pressure from the family in London and Paris." President Andrew looked at the candidate for Secretary of State who he had nominated not long ago and was approved by the senators in his own territory. To be honest, the Randy family is rich enough to rival a country. In the United States of America, its financial strength is amazing, and it is among the top in finance, weapons and industry. Over the years, he has been able to keep his seat as Speaker in the Senate and his power from being undermined by others. The support of the Randy family and Vanderbilt and others has contributed greatly to this. The workers attracted by these families' capital investment in factories in various states have made the senators of various states almost all influenced by the huge taxpayers of these factories, and then they have controlled the Senate. There are also many representatives of the interests of these Dutch companies in the House of Representatives. As a veteran in the political arena, Andrew knows how to make choices. Seward's resignation and the succession of Blake from the Randy family are good in his opinion. At least he is more closely tied to the interests of Dutch capitalists. As a representative of the Dutch in the political arena, the current problem faced by the Dutch is naturally the anti-Dutch of the Rothschild family. At this time, he has gloriously transformed from an American president to a Dutch who protects ethnic interests. Family affairs are put first, national affairs, and world affairs. This is the selfishness and self-knowledge of people. While carrying out the short squeeze campaign of the Holler parent company's stock, Captain Vanderbilt also continued to buy another railway stock connecting New York Hudson Railway stock. This railway is almost parallel to the Erie Canal and was the most important railway in the United States at that time. By November 20, 1868, Vanderbilt had become one of the largest shareholders of the Hudson Railway Company. Thanks to the Buck friends for their support for Leo's quick update, lifetime no regrets SF, weird feeling, and Yang Xiaming. Chapter 443, Jewish Soft Power, Leakers Around You? When the news that Vanderbilt had become one of the largest shareholders of the Hudson Railroad came out on November 21, 1868, not only the United States was shocked, but even many people in Europe were stunned. In just 2 months, the American Captain Vanderbilt actually went from a giant in American maritime freight to a giant in land transportation railways and buses, in just over 2 months. Now, in addition to using a large amount of funds, he even wants to get involved in other railways in the United States. And it's the busiest Hudson Railroad in New York? Does he have so much money? Is he crazy? No one thinks that it can raise enough funds to acquire the Hudson Railroad in just 2 months. This is a railway calculated in tens of millions of dollars, which is not comparable to the previous Harlem Railroad. London. Lionel Rothschild was a little hesitant. The recent news from the United States made him very irritated. The Mellon family secretly pushed the New York City Council to oppose the Harlem Railroad's acquisition of the New York bus. When the Philadelphia councilors attacked President Andrew to prevent him from intervening, Lionel, like most people, thought that Andrew would stop. In fact, Andrew was passive and did not dare to intervene at will. However, Vanderbilt secretly united many shareholders, using the decline of stocks to harm the interests of shareholders as bait, and finally won over the shareholders of the company and took over the company. Lionel used the Mellon Consortium to launch a first shot to snipe the Dutch capitalists in the United States, but it was off target. This made him very angry. While secretly cursing the Mellon Consortium for being useless, he hated Vanderbilt, a nearly 70-year-old man who had caused him great harm. I won't let you, an old guy, have a good time. Wait and see. Since you are old but not old at heart, you still have the idea of dominating the New York Railway. Then, you deserve to be buried in New York. November 23, 1868. Some Wall Street speculators who did not participate in the short selling of Holler's parent company's stock received news from many senior financiers. They are the most well-known financial experts on both sides of the Atlantic, with strong authority and recognized by many Europeans and Americans. They believe that Captain Vanderbilt is caught in the short squeeze of Holler's parent company and does not have enough internal support to short-sell Hudson Railway shares. As their statements continue to be published in newspapers in European countries and the United States, many people begin to be pessimistic about Vanderbilt. After hearing the news, William IV, who was in Amsterdam, faced the Dutch high-level officials including Prime Minister Thorbecke with worried expressions on their faces and asked for instructions and countermeasures. William IV only said one sentence, "Wait." William IV said to Mackay Sean, the director of Dutch International Intelligence, "Didn't we bribe many senior American officials and newspapers? It's time to use them." Mackay Sean looked at William IV in confusion. William IV said in a shocking statement, "People think that the Netherlands will help the Dutch in the United States. This idea is wrong. Ignoring the surprised expressions of the crowd, he continued, "We need to do the opposite. We can echo the shouts of those anti-Dutch people. We can increase their voices. Your Majesty, will this put unprecedented pressure on the Dutch? Will President Andrew be unable to withstand the pressure?" asked Interior Secretary General. "President Andrew is more powerful than people think," William IV said. "Don't worry, this is a stress test for the Dutch. If they pass, they will be free to do whatever they want in the future. If they fail, the largest ethnic group in the United States may change hands to others, but it is only in name only." Prime Minister Thorbecke said at this time, "The Prussians have been suppressed in the transition, and it is difficult for them to regain their popularity in North America in a short time. The Irish have no solid backing. In theory, this is their biggest advantage. After all, countries are most assured without foreign backing. However, what is being competed now is various indicators including financial resources. Under these hard indicators that the Irish cannot provide at present, it is not easy to replace the Dutch. Needless to say, the British, in the case of the entire United States anti-British situation, it is already good for the British in England to come forward, not to mention ruling the United States. In this case, the Dutch are the only best players who can replace the Netherlands in various indicators." Thorbecke suddenly looked up at William IV and said in great surprise, "Is it a Jew?" "Yes, it is a Jew," William IV answered with great certainty. After that, the whole Privy Council was extremely quiet. Jews are not someone that anyone can mess with. Although this nation has no country, the legend of the Bible says that Jews have always been around. This is the kind and soft power of Jews in the hearts of all Europeans. In addition, Jews in European countries are most specialized in the housekeeping industry, so many high-level Europeans have Jewish eyes and ears. The Jews' natural talent for housekeeping has made Jewish housekeepers of European politicians and capitalists famous. Just as useful as the Filipino maids in a certain port in the past life. It is under such circumstances that when you are the king, when the financial housekeepers and life housekeepers around you are Jews, you will gradually identify with the Jews and accept their views and positions. When your father hired Jews for 20 years and went out to make a living as an adult, your every move has been widely circulated in the Jewish circle. And every detail from childhood to adulthood has been passed on, and everyone's face changed drastically. The most powerful Jewish people at present are the Rothschild family. Currently, the Netherlands is fighting with the Rothschild family. Does that mean that the nannies and housekeepers of many Dutch capitalists have become the eyes and ears of this Jewish family, monitoring the every move of high-level Dutch people and then passing the information to the top Rothschild family members in Europe? If this is true, then the Rothschild family may have known a lot about the Netherlands, and there are no secrets at all. If there are people around you who employ Jews, please express your opinion. After William IV finished speaking, the entire Privy Council was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Whoever raised his hand proved that he might become a leaker of the entire Kingdom of the Netherlands. This is a very serious crime. Although no one thinks that this is a deliberate leak, it is no longer important, because in fact, you have helped your opponent leak. Your Majesty, my housekeeper is a Jew. As the voice came, it broke everyone's overlooking the table. Looking up, many people changed color. It turned out to be him? Is there a Jewish spy around him? William IV took a deep breath when he saw this person, and then he calmed down his uneasiness. He looked at Thorbecke and asked, "What does the Prime Minister think about this? This matter can be big or small. Although we have no evidence that your butler is someone's spy, as senior officials of the Dutch government, we must not keep the source of danger around us, you know." This was very straightforward. Minister of Industry Wim Cotter immediately understood that the Prime Minister was asking him to issue a dismissal order. Just as he was about to agree, William IV suddenly said, "I have a better idea. I think it would be better to keep him. Maybe he will be more useful, right?" Thorbecke was puzzled by William IV's obstruction at first, but he soon figured out the connection and praised him secretly. There are quite a lot of monthly ticket support today. Thanks to the book friends Zinzi Zhengyang, Luojan Hongchen, Elysium, Nandongming 1, Xiamo Hage 1, book friends 2020626080734823, book friends 202003210109498082, $Ling Meng, book friends 202001192054177726, Shadow, are you tired of accompanying me, Piaoi and Yimu, Book Friends 20210301104138460054, Renjian Yishidang, Book Friends 2,017,030,626,852, Xianshan Kexin, Chief Scepter. Thanks to the above book friends for their monthly ticket support. Chapter 444 I want him to win, then he will definitely win. 1868. The financial market of the United States of America was once again in turmoil because of Captain Vanderbilt. When many people questioned whether he had enough capital to enter more American railway networks, more international financial people were not optimistic about his subsequent actions. Therefore, under the instigation of the Mellon Consortium, many people sold short the Hudson Railway stocks, which caused financial turmoil in the United States, and many people followed suit and entered the short-selling market. The funds invested were calculated in millions of dollars. It seems that the short sellers are very fierce. Almost more than 80% of people are not optimistic about Vanderbilt. Avenue 9 is perfect, but it allows one to escape. Even the Dutch people around Andrew, the President of the United States of America, are not optimistic about this Dutch compatriot. Even James Speed, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, reminded President Andrew that Vanderbilt's approach was contrary to financial practices and said that Andrew should be cautious in his words and deeds. After all, if Vanderbilt fails, it will have a profound impact on the next U.S. election. But Andrew said calmly, "I still say that. I think Vanderbilt will win." James Speed was puzzled as to where Andrew's confidence came from. The two had supported each other for decades. It was precisely because of their close relationship that the Dutch were now known as the golden partner in American politics. They became the flag of a faction established independently within the Republican Party. Originally ranked after the Irish faction of former President Lincoln and before the German faction, they have now become the first faction of the Republican Party. After Prussia was suppressed, Secretary of State Seward was fired by Lincoln. Moreover, the Irish have kept a low profile after losing Lincoln, and the Dutch are enough to beat other factions. The Dutch have almost occupied the peak of power in the Republican Party. On the Democratic side, the Senate Minority Leader Stephen Douglas currently has the greatest reputation in the Democratic Party and is a popular candidate for the next president. Andrew will definitely participate in the election. Many people began to discuss that this is an election between the Dutch and the Dutch, so many people shifted the discussion to the power of the Dutch. Andrew was very dissatisfied with this. Obviously, many people who are jealous of the power of the Dutch began to clear the accounts of the Dutch, which is obviously affecting the public opinion of the two strong Dutch candidates. When President Andrew thought of this, his face suddenly changed. Vanderbilt must win. James Speed looked puzzled. Why? I didn't understand why the Dutch government and the royal family supported us so much before. So here's the reason. President Andrew explained, if Vanderbilt loses this time and other families take his place, it may become a preliminary battle before the election, and then it may affect our popularity in the December election. The reason why the Dutch can become the top power ethnic group in the United States is that in addition to the Dutch's love of participating in politics, the most important thing is that the Dutch occupy a strong dominant position in the U.S. economy. If this amulet is broken, the power of the Dutch will be questioned. He raised his head and said heavily, "So, Vanderbilt must take over the Hudson Railway." Accident soften occur in a moment. Faced with the acquisition of the Hudson Railway, which no one is optimistic about. So Vanderbilt started to fight back again. On the one hand, due to the involvement of the wooden stock, many investors believed that Vanderbilt's investigation was not enough at this time, and believed that he did not have such a large financial strength and appetite to swallow the shares of the Hudson Railway, so the market circulated rumors that Captain Vanderbilt lacked funds. Vanderbilt continued to enter the market to buy goods. Amsterdam, Netherlands. William Ivey would read a Dutch newspaper every day, and would also collect many newspapers from various countries and read them slowly. This was the thing he had been most focused on since he came to this era, and he had never stopped for 11 years. Every time he read the newspaper, there would be no one around him except the king's chief guard Tenrudo. Even Alexandra did not enter this king's private office. Chief guard Tenrudo was deeply trusted by William Ivey. He didn't talk much, but he was extremely shrewd. He only followed William Ivey's orders. He could be said to be the most important shadow of William Ivey. In this regard, he was the one who executed many of William Ivey's shady things. William Ivey picked up the page in the New York Times that had a negative view of Vanderbilt's acquisition of the Hudson Railroad and said, Ten Rudo, many people are not optimistic about him. Do you think Vanderbilt will lose this time? Captain Ten Rudo, who just turned 30 this year, stared at the newspaper in William Ivy's hand without blinking, and did not dare to look William Ivy in the eye. Your Majesty already has an idea in his mind. I think your Majesty has grasped the direction of the whole thing. William Ivy smiled and said, "Oh, are you so sure?" Ten Rudo's expression relaxed a little from seriousness, and then he continued to maintain a respectful look and said, "Your Majesty, if you want Vanderbilt to lose, then he will lose. If you want him to win, then he will definitely win." Ha ha ha, the one who knows me is Ten Rudo. William Ivy put down the newspaper in his hand, walked forward to help Ten Rudo straighten his slightly crooked bow tie, and ordered, "Tell Vanderbilt, I want him to win. At the same time, notify Andy, the Secretary General of the Bilderberg Agency, and ask him to give Vanderbilt enough support." "Yes, Your Majesty." Looking at Ten Rudo closing the door of the four-person office from the outside, William Ivy murmured seriously, "If the Netherlands wants to develop, it needs a protector. Sweden is not it, and Denmark is even less so. The Russian Empire will be difficult to rely on in the face of many disasters in the future. France is even more unreliable. Prussia is ambitious, and it's good enough that Britain doesn't stab you in the back. Austria-Hungary can hardly achieve great things, and Italy is a fence-sitter. The Spanish colonies will be the food of the United States in the future." In the end, there was no resistance. After all, the United States has been greatly weakened after the division, which happens to be the ally that the Netherlands needs most. Therefore, the United States of America has been closely connected with the Dutch route. For this reason, the Netherlands will not hesitate to invest more resources. As for the Jews, haha, the Dutch will not belong to you in this life. At least in terms of the United States' financial control over the United States, the Netherlands can definitely suppress them from now on. Originally, I was thinking that when the Jewish financial control over Europe was greatly weakened during World War I and World War II, that would be the best time for the Dutch. But now, since the Rothschild family wants to strangle us, I'm sorry, I will really fight back. Thanks to book friends Mu Yunfu, Luo Jin Hongjin, book friend 150,819,212,425,657, HB 198,909,030, Honor Twun, book friend 202201121918488707, Wei Yu Kang, book friend 20220401073923362, Sprained Little Snake, etc. Thank you to all book friends for your monthly ticket support. Chapter 445: A Compromise from the Palace of Versailles. When the stock of the parent company of Haller, the American shipping giant Captain Vanderbilt, was being shorted, the biggest player in this short selling finally surfaced, the Mellon family. On November 23, 1868, the Mellon Consortium invested $100,000 to publicly buy the Hudson Railroad short. After that, on the 24th and 25th, they invested another $400,000 and $500,000 respectively, a total of $1 million to buy shorts. In response, Vanderbilt played along and let rumors spread randomly. He asked his broker to persuade the broker to sell the stock. After the news quickly spread in the market, the whole United States and Europe were shocked. I've seen shameless people, but I've never seen such shamelessness. All is fair in war. Do you still expect others to use overt tactics every day to let you see through their cards? I am very dissatisfied. Vanderbilt is cheating. He is cheating the hard-earned money of friendly shareholders in the entire United States. Vanderbilt is indeed a giant who has entered the American capital world. He is so good at this trick. London, England. Lionel Rothschild was also shocked when he first heard it. He asked the Mellon family to rush to the front and deliberately suppress the stock of Halley's parent company, which was taken over by Vanderbilt, so that Vanderbilt would take into account the company's stock loss and dividends. In this way, he wanted to prevent Vanderbilt from taking the Hudson Railway stock in the market. Originally, I thought that this method of attacking itself to rescue the periphery by attacking way to save Zhao was very satisfactory. However, what he didn't expect was that Vanderbilt, the old fox, actually borrowed arrows from the straw boat, borrowed the power of the enemy, bought a large number of short-selling stocks in his own company, and used the huge reputation of the Mellon family to attract those stock speculators with financial ambitions to enter the company's short-selling market, and successfully used the Haller parent company to attract all short-selling tickets. Vanderbilt then attracted the short sellers who were hostile to him into the fishing net he designed like a magnet, and finally closed the net and harvested a huge catch. While destroying the other party's gunpowder in one fell swoop, he also made a lot of money. Lionel Rothschild is still very frightened. This time on the Mellon family, he shook more than $500,000, although this is a drop in the bucket for the Rothschild family in London. But this money is not picked up for free from the sky. What he ate was actually spit out, which runs counter to the practice of always liking to make money for himself. At this time, his financial butler hurried in, and suddenly brought him a lot of news, which even shook his emotions, which were not very volatile. "Vanderbilt, how dare you play tricks on me? Damn it!" Lionel Rothschild's blood pressure suddenly surged and he fainted. The financial steward hurriedly called for help. France, Paris. James Rothschild was received by Napoleon III at the Palace of Versailles. James' face had always maintained aristocratic etiquette of great respect for Napoleon III since he came in. And Napoleon III also gave enough face to the Dutch financial controller. Accompanying him to meet James was French Prime Minister Olivier. "Your Majesty looks in good spirits recently," James greeted first. Napoleon III laughed. "There is no way, I feel great when things are going well." James Rothschild smiled and said, "Yes, although the French Empire is making slow progress in the Far East, it is making good progress due to the strong management of your Majesty. It is said that it has already encroached on 3/4 of Cambodia's territory. It will not be long before it takes over the eastern territory of the Kingdom of Siam. By that time, France will own Cambodia, South Vietnam and the North Vietnam it is attacking. Its colonies in the Far East will immediately surpass Spain's Philippines and become second only to the Kingdom of the Netherlands and the British Empire." He said with longing, "Only then will the French Empire truly become a colonial power in the Far East." Napoleon III said in a trembling and heroic voice, "That's right, but at present, the war seems to have entered a bottleneck. You know, as long as it is a war, many things are needed." James Rothschild said with a painful look on his face, "The Rothschild family's factories are willing to help France produce 5,000 firearms and matching ammunition for a large army." Napoleon III said helplessly, "As you know, 5,000 guns are only enough to fight North Vietnam. The Siamese army in Cambodia has been transformed by Western weapons and is no longer what it used to be." James Rothschild changed his gentleman smile and looked at Napoleon III with dissatisfaction. "Your Majesty, is this really the case?" Under his stare, Olivier, who had been very quiet beside him, suddenly helped Napoleon III out and said, "Sir James, your Majesty has always been most concerned about national development, so he has the most accurate grasp of the size of national needs. So your Majesty is also working hard." James Rothschild seemed unwilling to give Prime Minister Olivier a roll of his eyes, and then he compromised helplessly, "A total of 20,000 guns. In addition, we are supporting £200,000 as France's military expenditure." 200,000 military expenditure? Napoleon III's quick thinking was enough to add more than 5,000 new recruits to the French army, which was a considerable number. However, this was just child's play and not the focus of today's meeting with James Rothschild. He winked at Olivier. Olivier understood that this was for him to make the more excessive request. If the king orders his subjects to die, the subjects have to die. "Sir James, there are currently more than 100,000 French soldiers fighting in the Far East. Every year, military expenses are needed for their food, clothing, and shelter. There are also more than 400,000 people in the mainland waiting for military funds. So shouldn't we provide more support for military expenses? Don't get me wrong, we mean borrowing interest on national debt." James' face changed slightly when he heard this. He looked at Napoleon III's expression of trust in you and Oliver's eager look. James sighed, "It's not that we can't help." Napoleon III was delighted to see that James was so tactful, but he quickly put it away. When he saw that Olivier was thoughtful and looked at James with vigilance, he instantly understood that this was a request. When Olivier saw Napoleon III coming to him again, he could only stand up and say, "Sir James, do you have any difficulties? Perhaps our government can help you solve it." James pretended to hesitate, and finally sighed, and then slowly and reluctantly said openly, "We have some business in the United States. You know, when we didn't give them New France, our family had a lot of business in Louisiana, the United States. Now it is ruled by the Dutch, So I think we need to break the Dutch monopoly and take back the Rothschild family's interests there. For this reason, my nephew Lionel in the UK has failed in several battles with the Dutch. So in order to not only do it at the last minute, I think your Majesty can help us with this. Napoleon III and Olivier looked at each other, and it was indeed the case. How to help? Napoleon III asked. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 446, Someone is Behind? It is said that the Dupont family is the closest ally of the French government. This family can be traced back to your uncle, the great French Emperor Napoleon I. At that time, it was the top family of French descent in the United States. I think that if your Majesty steps in, you can ask the Dupont family to help us. Dupont is good at gunpowder and financial capital operations. Okay, I promise you, but I think the low-interest loan can be set at £1 million. James finally agreed to Napoleon's request. Dupont is the purpose of his trip. As for borrowing money, it is not a loss. There is interest, but it is just a little less. On November 27, 1868, the French Dupont family expressed their pessimism that the Hudson Railroad Company would fall into the hands of Vanderbilt, the captain. Because of this large family in the United States said that it had followed the Mellon family and entered the short selling of the parent company of Haller, thereby dragging down the Captain Vanderbilt. Unlike the Mellon Consortium, the Dupont family is the oldest and most unique family of wealth in the United States. Although this family is not as wealthy as the Dutch Randy family, and it is difficult to force some other ethnic families in politics, the family has formed an almost monopoly position in the gunpowder of the United States. In particular, the relationship between old DuPont and President Jefferson has made DuPont's development almost synchronized with the development of the United States for decades. Therefore, in terms of political influence, even Morgan and Rockefeller are difficult to match. Now this family has stood up and clearly opposed the Dutch Vanderbilt. What does this represent? Many people are thinking deeply. Secretary of State of the United States of America Bosch has summoned Al Gore, the ambassador of the Dutch embassy in the United States, many times, but from the outside, it seems very calm. Could it be that the Netherlands is helpless about this, and President Andrew will bite the bullet and help the Dutch Captain Vanderbilt to fight against the Dupont family? Is that so? No, watch the show. Things often appear in places that people can't imagine. That's the surprise. On November 28, 1868, the Wall Street Journal, the largest financial newspaper in the United States, suddenly broke the news that Captain Vanderbilt was shorting the Hudson Railway stocks. On the other hand, he let his brokers take all the contracts sold. Through these two means, Vanderbilt quickly closed the case and reached 40% of Hudson stock, reaching a monopoly. After the news came out, the stock was immediately pulled up by retail investors, and those who shorted the stock suffered heavy losses. After Vanderbilt took over the Hudson Railway, the news came out and shocked the world. Henry, the head of the DuPont family, is said to be furious because this time he participated in the short selling, although the DuPont family lost more than $1 million. More importantly, the DuPont family's prestige for decades has almost been swept away, and they have lost a lot inside and outside. The Mellon family has also become the biggest loser among the American families in this short selling operation. In total, the Mellon family lost more than $2 million, equivalent to more than £400,000. You know, this is almost enough to buy 3 steam battleships. On December 1, 1868, Vanderbilt began to close the net, requiring those speculators to fulfill their contracts and settle the transactions with him. The same tragedy as that of Haller's parent company occurred. An emergency board meeting of the Hudson Railroad was held at the Century Hotel in New York. The attendees were all shareholders of the Hudson Railroad, and only shareholders who held at least 3% of the company's shares could attend the meeting. However, the attendees were all familiar faces, and most people didn't know what was going on. Everyone, please be quiet. Seeing that the time was almost up, Trins, the original largest shareholder of the Hudson Railroad, shouted, "Today's emergency board meeting is held because our company is currently under pressure from Vanderbilt's 55% of the shares of our Hudson Railroad in the stock market." Everyone's face changed drastically. Many shareholders even showed dissatisfaction. Is Vanderbilt determined to go ashore to make a living by doing this? The shareholders were in an uproar, and everyone mocked unhappily. Trins glanced at the man, then agreed as if nothing had happened. Mr. Vanderbilt may have experienced 2 strong waves at sea, so he recently felt that it would be safer to take shelter on land. Trins looked at his pocket watch and said, "It's almost time for the meeting. I think you should be here too." As soon as Trins finished speaking, Vanderbilt, dressed in a formal suit, walked in. Mr. Trins, I'm Vanderbilt, the man you just discussed who wanted to take shelter on land. As soon as Vanderbilt came in, he hurried over to greet Trins. Vanderbilt, who had long coveted the Hudson Railroad Company, naturally would not fail to recognize the current largest shareholder of the Hudson Railroad Company. "Mr. Vanderbilt, I have called everyone here in accordance with the requirements that can be put forward to the board of directors. I wonder if Mr. Vanderbilt has any advice. If someone snatches away your beloved baby, I believe no one will give that person a good face." The Hudson Railroad was planned, completed and put into operation by Trins, and it was all handled by him. It can be said that it is no different from his own child. How can he still smile and greet the murderer who intends to take away his child? Trins replied coldly, "Our Hudson Railroad is an old railway company that has been operating for decades. We are absolutely not afraid of any form of threat." Trins did not have any good feelings for the American business and capitalist figure in front of him. It was no wonder. Would you have any good feelings for someone who threatened your position? Since Mr. Trins is so direct, then I won't beat around the bush. Vanderbilt waved his hand, pointed at the documents brought by his subordinates, and said, "As a shareholder who owns 40% of the shares of Hudson Railway Company, I think my request to join the board of directors to participate in the daily operation of the company and become the new chairman should not be too much." 40% of the shares, should it be 50%? Terrans asked doubtfully. If it had not exceeded the 50% monopoly line, Vanderbilt's 40% of the shares would not have made much difference to Hudson Railway Company, and he would not have convened an emergency board meeting as Vanderbilt wanted. "What's the matter with 50%? Vanderbilt asked in confusion. At this time, a voice that Vanderbilt was very familiar with came from the door. "If you don't understand, I can explain to you why it is 50%. Vanderbilt was startled and turned to look at the door. He saw a young man about 30 years old, who walked steadily and wore a well-fitting suit, walked in. Vanderbilt recognized this person, who turned out to be John Morgan, the heir of the Morgan family. Chapter 447 I am Dutch? Vanderbilt was startled, and saw John Morgan slowly walking in. He had a bad feeling in his heart. John Morgan smiled and walked towards Vanderbilt. He stopped when he was very close to him and looked at the chairman of Hudson Railroad Company, Terrans, and said, "Mr. Terrans is right. It is 50% of the shares, but the other 10% is in my hands." Vanderbilt's face changed. "What are you doing?" Vanderbilt whispered to John Morgan, who was right in front of him. "What are you doing? Mr. Vanderbilt only needs you to buy the shares of Hudson Railroad Company, and I don't need to buy the shares of Hudson Railroad Company." John Morgan looked at the tycoon in front of him, who was like a big shot in the American business world, with a triumphant smile, and seemed to see his dejected look. If it were normal times, Vanderbilt would be interested in this young man who performed well, but Vanderbilt hated such young people at the moment and ignored him. Then he said to Trins, "Mr. Trins, if you don't mind, I would like to talk to Mr. John for a few minutes." "Okay, but you better hurry up." It can be seen that Trins is very happy to see Vanderbilt and John Morgan have a dog-eat-dog competition. John Morgan seemed to have anticipated this scene, so when Vanderbilt took a look and walked out of the corridor of the bodyguards outside, he also followed him out, and naturally the bodyguards of the two naturally left a certain distance. "Morgan family heir, I hope you can give me a reasonable explanation, because you have violated my interests. Otherwise, I will complain to the headquarters of Morgan Bank, and be careful that I will publish it in major newspapers in the United States. As a client, Morgan Bank actually tracks the capital operation trajectory of clients to interfere with their business. I think that Morgan Bank, which currently ranks among the top 5 banks in the United States, will suffer serious reputation damage." "Mr. Vanderbilt, what you said is unreasonable," John Morgan sneered. Vanderbilt's bad premonition became stronger. "What do you mean? If you have the ability to complain, I don't even mind you suing Morgan Bank in the newspaper. To tell you the truth, Morgan Bank didn't know that you asked us for money for the acquisition of Hudson Railway Company, So it did not harm the interests of those shareholders, but was a personal act of our Morgan family. John Morgan replied with a sarcastic smile, "If you don't mind, I can introduce an old friend to you." "Old friend?" Vanderbilt asked puzzledly. "Mr. Vanderbilt, we meet again." Thomas Mellon came out from the corner and said, "Is it you?" On October 1, 1818, 5-year-old Thomas Mellon and his parents boarded a ship called G-High from St. John, New Brunswick, eastern Canada to Baltimore, Maryland, USA. The family left their hometown of Castleton, England, and traveled across the Atlantic Ocean from London, passing through Canada. After 3 months of arduous travel, they finally boldly arrived at the United States. In this land, Thomas finally relied on his own efforts to become a giant with great influence in the United States. As the founder of the Mellon family, the richest family in the United States, he was called an outstanding American business figure in the 1860s, along with Rockefeller and Junior's Morgan. Before that, there were only old DuPont who made his fortune in the early 19th century and Blythe of the Landy family who made his fortune in the late 1850s. Therefore, Vanderbilt was more wary of this person than John Morgan, who had just emerged. "It's you? Why are you here?" Vanderbilt was really surprised, and suddenly came to his senses and said, "Did you do this together?" Mr. Vanderbilt is really smart. John Morgan smiled proudly. "Yes, just as you guessed, it was me who told Mr. Thomas your information, which led to this acquisition." "What benefits will this bring to you?" Vanderbilt asked. "I don't know what the benefits are, but I know you are the kind of person who won't bait until you see the fish." John Morgan smiled a little proudly. "I have studied your resume, Mr. Vanderbilt. Since you entered the capital and financial circles over the past few decades, every move you made has been rewarded with a lot of rewards, especially in the past 10 years. You have been almost undefeated. This time is no exception. So you took advantage of the opportunity to buy the Hudson Railroad Company's shares when others were shorting the shares of my Halley parent company. Seeing that the two did not deny it, you are really good at calculating." Vanderbilt ignored John Morgan's sarcasm, grabbed Thomas Mellon and asked, "Mr. Thomas, I want to ask you, did you calculate against me this time on purpose or did you do it on impulse?" Thomas Mellon is 55 years old. He has experienced the ups and downs of life, but he is not as impetuous as John Morgan in dealing with the world. He had not spoken since he first appeared. For some reason, he had experienced many tough battles and always felt that things were not that simple. Seeing Vanderbilt asking back, he replied, "There is nothing wrong with us as businessmen seeking profit. This time our family got involved. I think Mr. Vanderbilt should also know that we were forced to do so. To be honest, we did not come here specifically for Mr. Vanderbilt, but for other purposes. This time it was purely a spur-of-the-moment decision. I hope Mr. Vanderbilt can understand our helplessness." Vanderbilt suddenly realized, "Is it the Rothschild family?" The two neither admitted nor denied it. Thomas Mellon paused and said, "I have been so frank with Mr. Vanderbilt, I think Mr. Vanderbilt should tell me your plan now, right? In fact, I think it will be a success if we join forces to take over the Hudson Railroad Company. I'm sorry, I'm not interested, at least not now. I will not cooperate with the people instigated by the Rothschild family." Vanderbilt replied coldly, "How to use the shares in your hands to get your due benefits, you figure it out yourself, I can't control it. You own 40% of the shares, the Morgan family holds 10% of the Hudson Railroad shares, and our Mellon family also holds 15% of the shares. The remaining Trins owns 25%, and the rest are small shareholders holding 10%. John Morgan asked puzzledly, "Mr. Vanderbilt would rather go bankrupt than cooperate with us. Although I grew up in the United States for decades, I still have Dutch blood in my body." Vanderbilt looked at John Morgan with disdain and said, "The Rothschild family dominates the financial status of Britain, but you British people can only hide in the United States for refuge. It's ridiculous. I feel sorry for you. Even if I file for bankruptcy, I will not let the Rothschild family infiltrate my business. Because I am Dutch?" Chapter 448, The Morgan family and the Mellon family need to be punished? Vanderbilt, don't go too far and be stubborn, John Morgan shouted angrily. "Did I say something wrong?" Vanderbilt also said angrily, "You have been shouting about how great your British Empire is in the world, but it has only risen in the past 200 years, which is much more interesting than the Netherlands. If the two countries were not ruled by the same king, Britain would have taken the opportunity to learn the Dutch way of governing the country and collected the Dutch financial operation methods, etc. How could you have obtained the current financial status? At the same time, you also obtained Dutch capital to develop the British Isles. No, Ireland was not under your rule at that time. Vanderbilt laughed in anger. I just didn't expect that London would become a playground for the Jews. It's ridiculous. Paris, Frankfurt, Naples, and Vienna were actually captured by the Jews. You can't even defend your own capital, and you still have the nerve to point fingers at other parts of the world. Don't you think it's ridiculous? I think you're just bullying the good and fearing the evil. Vanderbilt's words made Thomas Mellon of the Mellon family, who had been smiling, suddenly change color. Mr. Vanderbilt, I am so polite to you because you are a successful person. Please don't go too far and insult us and our British identity. Otherwise, many things may be irreversible. Vanderbilt said calmly, did I, Vanderbilt, grow up scared? Would I be afraid of you? John Morgan next to him suddenly received Thomas Mellon's eyes. Okay, the past history and the current problems in Europe are not what we should discuss now. No one knows the truth of the history of the past. Mr. Vanderbilt, I think you should consider our suggestions carefully again and don't act on impulse. Whether John Morgan has been traveling around the United States with his father Junior Morgan in recent years, or he has been running the family's business alone in recent years, he has also seen a lot of big scenes. The impulse just now was just instinct. At this time, he has completely regained his composure, so he returns to the instinct of business. He doesn't want this cooperation to fail, so he persuades. What bullshit, the history of the past doesn't know the truth, and what's even more ridiculous is the current situation in Europe. It seems that the Rothschild family has infiltrated here. I mean, your families have already received letters of order from the Rothschild family, so you don't have to pretend to be so smart here, and you don't have to consider it. I still say that I will not harm the interests of the Dutch. This is my principle. On the contrary, the Rothschild family is targeting the Dutch. Vanderbilt flatly refused, however, considering that everyone is a well-known person in the United States, and that we are both optimistic about this company, I advise Mr. Thomas and Mr. John not to go against me, let alone the Dutch and the entire Dutch. If you two agree to stop now, I will do things in peace. I am willing to buy out 25% of your hands at the price you originally bought it. What do you think? That's impossible, Mr. Vanderbilt. I think you also know that when we bought the shares of Hudson Railroad together, the price was already far lower than the actual price of Hudson Railroad. When the stock market returns to normal, we can earn at least double. John Morgan glanced at Thomas Mellon. His meaning was very clear. Even if he couldn't get Vanderbilt's plan, as long as he kept the stocks in his hands and waited for a while, he could make back the principal and interest. In fact, Junior Morgan of the Morgan family and Thomas Mellon of the Mellon family had originally planned to cooperate with the Rothschild family to suppress the Dutch, take the opportunity to take advantage of the opportunity, and expand their influence and business territory in the economic and commercial map of the United States. Of course, it seems that the Dutch business tycoon in front of him is not so easy to deal with. It would be better to participate in his plan to make more money. However, it seems that Vanderbilt is a bit unwilling to accept the toast, but his non-cooperation is harmless. In this case, there is no need for us to talk anymore. I hope that the two gentlemen and your families can get what they want, Vanderbilt said coldly. He certainly understood what the two meant. John Morgan had been playing the villain from the beginning, while Thomas Mellon had been playing the hero. It was obvious that the two had come to mess with him from the beginning. However, Vanderbilt sneered in his heart. Although their disruption made the situation more serious, Vanderbilt was not an easy person to deal with. Looking at the backs of Thomas Mellon and John Morgan walking in, Vanderbilt narrowed his eyes, sneered and waved his hand. A straight man came over and put his ear to his mouth. Vanderbilt whispered a few words to the latter, who left quickly. He regained his calmness, tidied his somewhat messy bow tie, and then followed him into the conference room. Washington, in the White House. President Andrew is negotiating with Secretary of State Blash. Blash, should we support Mr. Vanderbilt? President Andrew has been like a frightened bird recently. The Rothschild family has declared that it will enter the financial and capital circles of the United States. At present, many American companies have begun to respond to this call. Obviously, the capital of the Dutch is too strong, and the concerns it has attracted have made Rothschild more handy. Currently, the Mellon family is leading the way, and the Morgan family is pushing behind the scenes. A few days ago, the DuPont family also began to make some unusual movements. President Andrew said worriedly, "The Morgan and Mellon families are from the United Kingdom, the DuPont family is from France, and the Prussians of the Rockefeller family have not made any noise, but I am also worried. My Secretary of State, you know, if these people unite together, what it means to us, you should know." Bosch is not only the current Secretary of State of the United States, he is also the helmsman of the United States' largest family, the American family, so his words and deeds will affect the direction of American policy. Mr. President, please rest assured that we need to trust Vanderbilt. You know, he has been in the Bilderberg Society for more than 20 years. Bilderberg Society. President Andrew suddenly came to his senses. Yes, the Bilderberg Society has more than 200 super influential people in the world, and they are all great people in politics, business, capital, science and technology, etc. Now, Prime Minister Danton of Belgium, Speaker Bite, him in the United States, and Bosch in front of him, etc., are all members of this organization. As long as they join, the resources they get are absolutely inestimable. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but remember that his current political enemy, Douglas of the Democratic Party, seemed to be a member of the same organization as him. However, he has the support of the Citibank Consortium, and he is currently supported by the Boston Consortium and the Randy Family Consortium, so for now, he still has the upper hand. Okay, in that case, I understand. With the three major consortiums, it seems that with Vanderbilt's decades of connections, he should not easily become the first person to sacrifice to the Rothschild family to attack the Dutch business territory in the United States. Mr. Vanderbilt, how did you guys discuss it? The chairman of the Hudson Railroad, Trins, looked at the three and asked with a sneer. He really didn't like them. If you just want to make money by operating our stocks, I believe you have already made a lot of money now, and there is no need to waste your precious time here. Our Hudson Railroad can still withstand this little storm. Despite this, although Trent said so, he was still a little uneasy in his heart. He didn't know what Vanderbilt and his friends wanted to do. If they wanted to make a profit from stocks, why did they participate in the operation of the Hudson Railroad and propose this shareholder meeting? Trent's nervousness on his face could not be hidden from Vanderbilt, John Morgan, and Thomas Mellon. They all felt a power to control the fate of other people's companies. Especially the young John Morgan showed a sense of pride. Vanderbilt seemed too lazy to talk nonsense with these people, and said straight to the point, "I believe you have all seen my idea in the newspaper." "Yes, I asked Mr. Terrence to hold this emergency board meeting this time. I originally wanted to help your company overcome the difficulties of being shorted. I had no other intentions, but now it seems that there is nothing more unnecessary than this. Therefore, I have a new idea now." As Vanderbilt's words came out, many people noticed that the atmosphere was tense. John Morgan and Thomas Mellon's faces changed slightly, and Terrence's face turned pale. "Now, I want to fully acquire all the stocks of your company." Vanderbilt's words shocked the whole audience. The whole conference room was suddenly audible. Not only Terrence looked at Vanderbilt in shock, but even John Morgan and Thomas Mellon were stunned. After a short silence, the whole audience burst into laughter. Everyone wondered if the American business tycoon in front of them had lost his mind due to his old age. This was simply impossible. Even if he had enough money, he would have to take over the Morgan and Mellon family's stocks. Or at least take over the small shareholders' stocks. Of course, if he could take over Mr. Trin's 25%, it would be even easier once and for all. Obviously, it seemed that both the Morgan and Thomas families were willing to transfer to him. Everyone present knew that the Rothschild family was behind these two families, and their retreat was blocked. In other words, it would be difficult for him to get the stocks of the two Liu families. As for the small shareholders, they had to be willing to sell. Chapter 449, Sudden Change. "Mr. Vanderbilt, I forgot to tell you one thing." John Morgan seemed reluctant and could not help reminding him, "You asked our family bank to provide you with a loan of $2 million. Although my father agreed, Morgan Bank is a joint stock company, so many shareholders are not optimistic about this loan, so it has been stopped. In other words, it is difficult for you to get another loan from Morgan Bank at present." Thomas Mellon shrugged. Mellon Bank was also stopped from providing loan to Mr. Vanderbilt for this reason. Seeing that several people really had a dispute, Trent suddenly smiled, and when he looked at Vanderbilt, He showed an expression of "I'll see what you do." This was even more proud in the eyes of the two. In their minds, if Vanderbilt did not get enough financial support from Morgan Bank and Mellon Bank this time, then he would not have enough funds to acquire the shares of Hudson Railway Company, which also meant that Vanderbilt's statement just now was just a joke. Vanderbilt did not answer. He took in the contemptuous expressions of everyone present. Trends looked at him as if he were an idiot, while John Morgan showed him ironic sympathy. Although Thomas Mellon had a blank expression on his face, Vanderbilt still caught the occasional flash of contempt in his eyes. "You will cry in a while," Vanderbilt thought again with a sneer in his heart. Just when everyone was shifting the topic of discussion to whether Vanderbilt was old and his brain was broken, a person appeared in front of everyone belatedly. The person was Collison, the general manager and strategic advisor of the Hudson Railway Company. He had a document tucked under his arm. Apart from Collison, perhaps only Vanderbilt knew what the content of the document was. What many people did not know was that this document was a death warrant that could bankrupt many people present. "Collison, didn't you go to Washington to attend the railroad conference?" Turlins asked with a frown. Logically, New York and Washington are so far apart, and he should not be here at this time since he went there in the morning. Moreover, as the general manager, he is a professional manager who does not have any stocks. He is not qualified to attend such a high-level shareholders meeting without being summoned. Collison looked haggard, and he did not look like he was pretending. He loosened his tie in a hurry, put the documents and a resignation letter in front of Turlins, and began to say, "Boss, we are in trouble." "What's wrong?" Looking at the resignation letter in front of him, Turlin's heart suddenly jumped for no reason, and he asked hurriedly, "What happened, Collison? Please explain it clearly." "Just received news that many citizens in New York City seem to be dissatisfied with our high charging standards. Recently, they are applying to the New York City Hall for a demonstration, with the purpose of asking us to reduce prices across the board." And Collison looked at the people next to him, and finally his eyes fell on Vanderbilt. Teslin asked hurriedly, "And what?" "Hurry up and finish your words." "It is said that the City Hall believes that the passenger flow is too large at present. Many companies have formally applied to the New York City government to explore a new third railway through New York City. It is said that the railway route is almost parallel to our company's Hudson Railway. The city government has begun to evaluate it. Today, the city government reported that many people are in favor of it. If the demonstration really attracts attention, then..." Collison looked up at Teslin, John Morgan, and Thomas Mellon, and explained, "If the demonstrators force it, it is very likely that it will be passed by the New York City Council and the City Hall will implement it." "What did you say? Why is this happening?" Teslin was stunned. Over the years, he has been constantly mocking the Harlem Railway Company for its remote routes and lack of popularity, and for not making money. On the contrary, the Hudson Railway Company where he works is almost full. He has been very proud of this for many years, but now it is possible that his pride has become the reason for the overturn. How can he bear this? The sudden bad news has shocked Teslin's mind. "Chairman, what do you think we should do? Is this news accurate? Are you sure the City Hall and the Council will approve it?" Terence clearly felt his legs go weak. "I have heard from insiders, it is absolutely true. It is said that this is due to the promotion of New York Mayor Klink. Boss, you know, Klink is of Dutch descent." Collison hesitated before continuing. "It is said that many members of the City Council have decided to vote to improve the traffic dilemma. The New York City government and the Council approved it." Terence was completely stunned after hearing this. Not only him, but all the shareholders present were also dumbfounded. The Hudson Railway will lose its monopoly on the most popular route? In other words, the future value of the Hudson Railway will become less important than it is now, and passenger and freight traffic will be seized by the market. In this way, the commercial value of the Hudson Railway Company must be reevaluated. Thinking of this, many people looked at Vanderbilt, and they were no longer as strong as before. On the contrary, many small shareholders began to show flattering colors. When everyone was panicking, except Thomas Mellon, no one noticed Vanderbilt's smug smile. Although facing difficulties, Teslin still had the demeanor of a general. He stabilized his emotions and said, "Don't worry, we will know the result in a few days. Maybe a miracle will happen. Everyone, go back and rest." Teslin's words gave people some hope, but Vanderbilt knew in his heart that it was just comforting, because at this time, the manipulators were no longer Teslin, but many giants in the United States. After sending these small shareholders back, Teslin said to Vanderbilt and others in a sarcastic tone, "I'm so sorry, Mr. Vanderbilt, Mr. John, Mr. Thomas, who asked you to buy our company's stocks at a low price, but in the current situation, it seems that you will also have to bear a lot of risks, and it is even very likely that you will have to bear some of the debts of the Hudson Railway Company in the end. I really feel sorry for you, especially Mr. Vanderbilt. I wonder if you still want to acquire the Hudson Railway Company." Obviously, Trins was not optimistic about the future of the Hudson Railroad. "We'll talk about it later." Trins didn't like to say more, so he said to Collison next to him, "Come with me." Collison naturally knew how anxious Trins was at the moment. Before leaving, he looked at Vanderbilt with an anxious look. Vanderbilt nodded to Collison, motioning her to rest assured, as if to say that he would take care of everything. Thomas Mellon took all of this in, and when only he, John Morgan and Vanderbilt were left in the conference room, he said to Vanderbilt, "If Mr. Vanderbilt is free, I would like to invite Mr. Vanderbilt to my residence to talk." "Okay, I have nothing to do anyway, it would be nice to have someone to chat with." Vanderbilt agreed. "I wonder if Mr. John Morgan will come with you." Chapter 450, All countries are watching the battle. Before John Morgan could answer, Thomas Mellon coldly interrupted, "This is the current situation. If Mr. John has anything to say, just go back." John Morgan saw Thomas Mellon's cold face and hated him in his heart. "If I hadn't been invited by the Rothschild family to help your Mellon family, we would have intervened in this matter. Now, as soon as you see that you are losing money or the situation is not right, you turn your face against us." Vanderbilt looked at John Morgan with an embarrassed face, and deliberately sighed. "Actually, you are a businessman. Who knew that such a bad thing would happen? Now we are all in the same boat. One more person means one more brain. Let's think of a solution together." Thomas Mellon looked at John Morgan with a grateful face. Although he understood that Vanderbilt was trying to sow discord, he had no choice but to nod and say, "In that case, let's discuss it together." British Empire, London. FK, the Morgan family and the Mellon family. The Mellon family actually want to rebel. Lionel Rothschild family was very angry. In a fit of rage, they even smashed the teapots made in the Far East 500 years ago that they had collected for many years. "Boss, should we give the Morgan family a beating? This time the Morgan family has gone too far. It's really too ugly to eat." Barrett is Lionel's personal financial butler and also the London butler of the Rothschild family. Therefore, Lionel has not concealed many things from the other party. In fact, because he is the helper left by his father, he is very handy to use. Barrett's proposal made her a little moved. No one wants to be bullied, let alone a world-class supercapitalist like him. But in the end, he suppressed this idea, waved his hand, and said, "It's not the time yet. Even if we want to deal with the other party, we have to wait until the Dutch are suppressed, and then slowly rectify them." "Boss," Rockefeller's side. Barrett hesitated. Lionel Rothschild knew what he was going to say and said with a smile, "That is the ancestral home of our Rothschild family. Prussia is currently powerful, so it is not appropriate to interfere too much in Rockefeller's internal affairs." He turned his head and looked at his old butler. "Bismarck is not an easy guy to deal with." "Barrett, boss means books. Is the Rockefeller family too close to Berlin at the moment? What do you think?" Lionel said, "The United States is in disarray at the moment, and it is the best time for us to advance. Barrett, please send an email to my Uncle James to thank him for asking Paris to come forward and make the DuPont family support us." Barrett's face changed slightly. James Rothschild wanted to seize power, which was not right. Did he forget the ancestral teachings of the old man Mayer Rothschild? Seeing Lionel's confident look, Barrett felt a little worried. Would the Rothschild in London become a subsidiary of Paris? On November 20, 1868, Vanderbilt, who was known as the Captain of the United States of America, began to close the net with the support of John Morgan, the heir of the Morgan family, and Thomas Mellon, the head of the Mellon family. He asked those speculators in the previous ball to fulfill the contract and handle the delivery to him. The same tragedy happened as the parent company of Haller. Short-selling speculators went to the market to buy Hudson Railroad Company stocks, but found that there were no sellers in the market at all, because all Hudson Railroad stocks were in the hands of Vanderbilt. At the same time, the truth finally came out and came to light. It turned out that the original largest shareholder of Hudson Railroad, Chairman Teslin, had signed a transfer contract with Vanderbilt 3 months ago. The contract was to complete the delivery of 25% of the shares of Hudson Railroad Company in his hands on November 25, 1868. As the news broke, people in the market went crazy. Many people cried with joy because they did not sell their stocks. Some people really cried because they sold their stocks at a high price not long ago. The stock price rose from $115 to $190 almost overnight. Vanderbilt finally took over the only two railways in New York City. At the same time, as many world-famous newspapers commented, he completed the most magnificent battle in financial history. In less than a month, he swept away $7 million in the pockets of speculators who tried to kill him. This short squeeze is also considered one of the greatest masterpieces in the history of global financial operations from ancient times to the present. Even the European Times, the most influential newspaper in Europe and even the world, declared on November 28, 1868, such a successful stock squeeze has never been seen in the Wall Street market. Great Vanderbilt, worthy of my selection. As long as the Hudson Railroad Company is taken over, the Dutch will soon gain another foothold in the economic landscape of the United States. The maritime transportation giant has successfully involved the land railway giant, and the Dutch have become more stable in the economic landscape. Capital, maritime transportation, land transportation, etc. are expanding from east to west, north to south, and Dutch capital is rapidly spreading in the United States. The political landscape has reached new heights with Andrew taking office as President of the United States. As these gradually penetrate into all aspects of the United States, the influence of the Dutch is enough to affect the future development of the United States and even the entire Europe and the United States. Your Majesty, now that Vanderbilt has successfully landed, what should we do next? The Dutch Prime Minister Thorbecke asked. In recent years, the development of the Netherlands has been so smooth that even he, as the Dutch Prime Minister, feels unbelievable. Everything is progressing in an orderly manner under the guidance of His Majesty. The outside world sees that the Netherlands seems to be constantly struggling and fighting. In fact, what they don't know is that many things are within their deduction. For example, on the issue of South Africa, the Netherlands won over the European team composed of France and Prussia to support the Boers in their fight against Britain, causing Britain to suffer heavy losses. The Netherlands finally compromised to force the Dutch Boers to leave South Africa, and let Britain give up the Australian continent to the Netherlands in order to take that strategic location. Many people believe that the Netherlands should not give up South Africa, which is a strategic road, because it is the strategic intersection between the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. The Australian continent is too remote, and the Netherlands will lose a lot if it changes. It was this view that caused a lot of controversy in the Netherlands at the time, and even many old nobles expressed dissatisfaction with their ancestors who sacrificed their lives to fight for a certain territory, and now they are changing it. William IV looked at Thorbecke and smiled, and said, "It's not over yet. Vanderbilt seems to have won. In fact, it's just a first victory. Wait, the Rothschild family and others haven't started the real operation yet. Prime Minister Thorbecke, don't forget that the DuPont family and the Rockefellers are not easy to deal with. I don't think they can escape Rothschild's financial control at present. Moreover, they are all small fights at present. Don't forget that the royal families and governments of various countries are watching the battle from the sidelines." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.